I am, for some reason, not broadcasting. Why am I not broadcasting? There we go. Now we're broadcasting. There it is. Wow, YouTube is gunky tonight. Gunky tonight. Gunky tonight.
The lack of division. I want more unity, and I think you know that.
The lack of division. Okay, sweet. Audio. Okay, sweet. Audio check has worked. Welcome everyone to the Average Intelligence Podcast. We're doing something. Sorry for the echo. We're doing something a little bit different tonight. Because CNN has seen fit to rob the American people of their constitutional options, as it were. Um, we are going to, or I should say, I am going to do my best to bring you complete coverage and commentary of both debates that are happening tonight. Yes, I am referring to the one in which Donald Trump and Joe Biden will be elderly slapping each other, but also Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who at one point, I guess, did qualify for the CNN debate, no longer does, but he will be hosting a live debate in which the way I understand it is he's going to answer the same questions hosted by John Stossel, I believe, if I what I read was correct. Thank you to the RFK campaign, by the way, for sending me that text message this evening. Otherwise, I would not have known that it was going to happen. And apparently, the debate is on, or at least it will be shortly. And when it does, actually, I need to configure that really quickly while I can. So I think I should go here and we will judge this very quickly to make sure I cover up that logo real pretty. Oh wow, it is really not letting me do this. Huh. Huh.
So that when people leave after those 90 minutes, they say, I get it. I get what the argument is, and I'm moved by that argument.
The comparative
Wow.
that people are making, though, and the nostalgia, as some have
Wow.
called it, for Trump, I think comes down to a simple thing for a lot of
Okay.
voters who aren't political junkies, and that is, I kind of like where the country was before COVID. If we hadn't had COVID, that would.
Okay. So that side is gonna not let me do what I want to do here. Hmm. Well, while we are sorting that out, I'm going to try to find another source. What do you mean rumble.com isn't working? Whoa, okay, hang on. What the fuck is going on? Rumble. Rumble.com is down. Rumble.com is down. What? I don't even know what's going on. You gotta be shitting me. I cannot believe this. What the hell is going on? Yeah, okay, how do I watch it? So, fun fact too, apparently there's going to be a 2 minute delay. So the debate actually does not start at 9 p.m. It will start at 9:02 p.m. Hang on, I'm going to see if this works real quick. Okay, perfect.
On in America right now. If one of them can at least give a spark of that, Maybe you
And
changed
this
it.
is actually, I think, the other problem for both men. Neither of them are great visionaries about,
Right.
painting a picture of what is the country supposed to be. And it's hard for them because they both are not the most articulate men in the world. I don't know how that's going to play out
We'll
tonight.
see
Sorry,
tonight.
just
I want to
making
thank
sure.
everybody here
Okay,
on
perfect.
the panel. The preliminaries are over. The main event is here. We'll be back with complete coverage.
Okay. So we appear to be up and running. I'm very glad I was able to make that happen. So I am actually going to open a new window. TheRealDebate.com. Now, what I was hoping for, I was hoping that RFK Jr. would be live streaming the debate himself. However, I'm not holding my breath on that. Because if he is, that would just make my life easier. And okay, so everyone, I can't believe I'm saying this. Um, I don't know if I should have people share it or not because I'm afraid that they will try to take the stream down because the truth is there should be nothing against this. CNN has said that it's not going to allow live streaming. I don't really know how they can legally do that considering this is politics, right? This is not. Oh, we appear to be on, so. Oh, not word. We don't want word. Oh, okay. Let me switch the view. So we are joined currently by Mr. Stossel on X.
Welcome to The Real Debate. I'm John Stossel, moderator tonight. CNN's hosting its first presidential debate for 2024, but they did not include the independent presidential candidate,
No, he did not.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
They did not.
So, this evening, live from Los Angeles, we're streaming the CNN debate, and here I will give Kennedy the same questions that Trump and Biden get. You'll see the CNN debate, plus Kennedy's answers here.
Oh,
This
perfect.
is all being hosted on Twitter, X we're supposed to call it, and therealdebate.com. But you could say this is the real debate with all the presidential candidates who poll in double digits.
Oh, apparently I cannot
Due to
pause
the
this. Why
inclusion
can I
of
not pause
Kennedy's
this?
answers, this broadcast will be a little bit longer. Now, let's go to CNN as they introduce their broadcast.
Oh, perfect.
We're live from Georgia, a key battleground state
Perfect,
in the race
perfect,
for the
perfect.
White House. In just moments, the current U.S. president will debate the former U.S. president as their party's presumptive nominees, a first.
I'm not
in
streaming
American
CNN.
history. We want to welcome our viewers in the United States and around the world to our studios in Atlanta. This is the CNN presidential debate.
This debate is being produced by
Sorry.
CNN and is coming
Just checking
to you
my
live
audio.
on CNN, CNN International, CNN.com, CNN Max, and
It's
CNN
a bummer that I can't pause
Espanol.
it, though.
This is a pivotal moment between President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump in their rematch for the nation's highest office.
Is it,
Each
though?
will make his case to the American people with just over 4 months until Election Day. Good evening, I'm Dana Bash, anchor of CNN's Inside Politics and co-anchor of State of the Union.
I'm Jake Tapper, anchor of CNN's The Lead and co-anchor of State of the Union. Dana and I will co-moderate this evening. Our job is to facilitate a debate between the two
I will
candidates
return
tonight.
in 1 moment.
Before we introduce them, we want to share the rules of the debate with the audience at home. Former President Trump will be on the left side of the screen. President Biden will be appearing on the right. A coin toss determined their positions. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer a question and 1 minute each for responses and rebuttals. An additional minute for follow-up, clarification, or response is at the moderator's discretion.
When it's time for a candidate to speak, his microphone will be turned on. and his opponent's microphone will be turned off. Should a candidate interrupt when his microphone is muted, he will be difficult to understand for viewers at home. At the end of the debate, each candidate will get 2 minutes for closing statements. There is no studio audience tonight. Pre-written notes, props, or contact with campaign staff are not permitted during the debate. By accepting our invitation to debate, both candidates and their campaigns agreed to accept these rules.
Now, please welcome the 46th
Sorry about that,
President
everybody.
of the United States, Joe Biden.
Oh, by the way, my guess for my prediction is that he will be relatively strong for the first 30 to 45 minutes.
Great to be here. Thank you.
And then, much like the State of the Union, you'll see him start to
And please
slowly
welcome the
wear
45th President of the
out.
United States, Donald Trump.
Trump's looking a little frumpy.
And please welcome Robert Kennedy Jr.
Gentlemen, thanks so much for being here. Let's begin the debate, and let's start with the issue that voters consider.
I actually love this.
Is there
Thank you.
concern the economy? President Biden.
Thank you.
Yes, so, but prices remain high. Since you took office, the price of essentials has increased. For example, a basket of groceries that cost $100 then now costs more than $120.
This is
and
awesome.
Typical home prices have jumped more than 30%. What do you say to voters who feel they are worse off under your presidency than they were under President Trump?
We got to take a look at what I was left when I became president, and what Mr. Trump left me. We had an economy that was in free fall. The pandemic was so badly handled. Many people were dying. All he said was, it's not that serious. Just inject a little bleach into your arm. You'll be
That's
all
the
right.
lie.
The economy collapsed. There were no jobs. Unemployment rate rose to 15%. It was terrible. And so
Because
what we
the
had to do is
government
try to put things
shut
back
down
together
cities.
again. And that's exactly what we began to do. We created 15,000 new jobs. We brought out in the position where we have 800,000 new manufacturing jobs. But there's more to be done. There's more to be done. Working class people are still in trouble. I come from Scranton, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, no
I come
thanks
from a
to you.
household where the kitchen table, if the things weren't able to be met during the month, it was a problem. Price of eggs, the price of gas, the price of housing, the price of
Take
whole
a
range of
breath,
things.
bro.
That's why I'm working so hard to make sure I deal with those problems. That we're going to make sure that we reduce the price of housing. We're going to make sure we build 2 million new units. We're going to
Okay.
make sure we cap rents so corporate greed can't take over. The combination, what I was left with in corporate greed, is the reason why we're in this problem right now. In addition to that, we're in a situation where if you take a look at all that was done in his administration, he didn't do much at all. By the time he left, things were in chaos.
You
Things were in
serious?
chaos. And so we put things back together. We created, I said, those
How would you
jobs.
know?
We
You were
made
in your
sure we
fucking
had a
basement.
situation where we brought down the price of prescription drugs, which is a major issue
For-
many
for-
people.
for-
To
no.
$15 for
For
insulin
people
shot
on
as opposed to
Medicare.
$400. No senior has to pay more than $200 for any drug, all the drugs.
They
can
all do
approve
that.
to
Why
get
do
in
they say that? It's
next
only
year.
for Medicare.
And the situation is and we're going to make that available to everybody, to all Americans. So we're working to bring down the price of around the kitchen table, and that's what we're going to get done.
Take a breath.
Thank you. President Trump?
We have the greatest economy in the history of our country. We have never done so well.
I don't know about the history. It was
Everybody
good.
was amazed by it. Other countries were copying us. We got
This
hit
is
with
true.
COVID. And when we did, we spent the money necessary so we wouldn't end up in a Great Depression, the likes of which we had in 1929. By the time we finished, so we did a great job. We got a lot of credit for the economy, a lot of credit for the military, and no wars, and so many other things. Everything was rocking good. But the thing we never got the credit for, and we should have, is getting us out of that COVID mess. He created mandates that was a disaster for our country. But other than that, we had given them back a country where the stock market actually was higher than pre-COVID, and nobody thought that was even possible. The only jobs he created are for illegal immigrants and bounce-back jobs, a bounce-back from the COVID.
And there it
He
is.
has not done a good job. He's done a poor job, and inflation's killing our country. It is absolutely killing us.
Thank you.
Yep.
President Biden?
You got a hand in
Well,
that,
the
but
greatest economy in the world. He's the only one who thinks that, I think. I don't
No.
know anybody else who thinks he had the greatest economy in the world.
we had the greatest
And,
economy in the world
you
at the
know,
time.
The fact of the matter is that
Technically, we still do.
we
But
find ourselves in a situation where his economy, he rewarded the wealthy. He had the largest tax cut in American history, $2 trillion.
Yeah.
He raised a deficit larger than any president.
My
had in
taxes
any
were
one
lower.
term. He's the only president other than Herbert Hoover who's lost more jobs than he had when he began. Since
That is
Herbert Hoover.
not.
The idea that he did something that was
That's
significant
not true.
in the military. You know, when he was president, there were
I
still
mean,
killing people in Afghanistan.
No, that's
he
not
didn't
true.
do anything about that. When he was president, we were still finding ourselves in a position where you had a notion that we were this safe country. The truth is, I'm the only president this century that doesn't have any, this decade, that doesn't have any troops dying anywhere in the world like he did.
President Trump, I want to follow up if I can.
Mr. Kennedy, the question was, people feel worse off because of inflation.
I thought they were cutting the stream.
I want to thank everybody for being here and for this opportunity, and thank you, John. I also want to thank Elon Musk for live streaming this on X. CNN made some statements suggesting that might be, that he may get sued for that, and I'm very, very grateful for the courage that he's shown to protect freedom of speech in this country. I want to just orient us a little bit about why we're here tonight. And I don't want it to make it sound like I'm complaining, because this isn't a personal issue. This is something that should be very troubling for our country. What happened with this debate? My uncle gave the first televised debate in 1960. Ever since then, the debate has been run by nonpartisan
I see what you did there.
organizations, the League of Women Voters till
League of Women Voters, yep.
And the debating commission thereafter. And this is the first time that a private corporation owns the debate.
This is true.
And it's troubling because CNN is making tens of millions of dollars.
There will
from
be
this
more,
debate. And so they have an incentive
I'm
to
okay
go
with
ahead
that.
and collude
Sure.
with
So
the
Fox
two
News should have
presidential
one.
candidates whose main purpose was to keep me off the stage. And
That's fair.
again, this isn't a personal issue. This is something that's important for our democracy, because Americans feel like the system is rigged. And this is this collusion with a corporation, for-profit corporation, that both those campaigns are going to be pumping in tens or hundreds of millions of dollars in advertising. So it's all a big payoff. This is exactly the kind of merger of state and corporate power
It's been happening
that
for a
I'm
long
running
time.
in order to oppose. And Americans believe that the system is rigged against them.
And I believe
because
them.
it is. And this is an example of how badly rigged it is.
Mr. Kennedy,
The question is
we're
about-
following the rules here. Your 2
You
minutes
can
are
do
up.
whatever you want with the minute that
It's
we
your
give you.
show. You should get
I
an
wanna follow up.
introduction.
I got to follow up.
We're going back to the debate.
I got to follow up, right?
Well, I'm going to ask you a follow-up. You can do
Not
whatever you want.
according to the weird person in my ear here.
Tariff on all goods
Well,
coming
that-
into the U.S.
ugh.
How will you ensure that that doesn't drive prices even higher?
It's not going to drive them higher. It's just going to cost countries that have been ripping us off for years, like China and many others, in
China.
all fairness to China. It's going to just force them to pay us a lot of money, reduce our deficit tremendously, and give us a lot of power for other things. But he made a statement. The only thing he was right about is I gave you the largest tax cut in history. I also gave you the largest regulation cut in history. That's why we had all the jobs. And the jobs went down, and then they bounced back, and he's taking credit for bounce back jobs. You can't do that. He also said he inherited 9% inflation. No. He inherited almost no inflation, and it stayed that way for 14 months.
It was
and
under
then it blew
2%
up
prior to
under his
COVID.
leadership because they spent money like a bunch of people that didn't know what they were doing, and they don't know what they were doing.
They're
It was
still
the worst,
doing it.
probably the worst administration in history. There's never
It's
been.
up there.
And as far as Afghanistan is concerned, I was getting out of Afghanistan, but we were getting out with dignity, with strength, with power. He got out. It was the most embarrassing day in the history of our country's life.
President Trump, over the last 8 years,
Like I told you, this book right here.
He says,
Read it.
The question
Last chapter
was,
deals with the
prices
pullout
are
of
higher
Afghanistan.
because of Trump's 10% tariff.
Stars and Stripes, 10 Kennedy.
And this is another example of why this debate is a problem, because these two men are the people who ran up the deficit that is causing the inflation.
Biden more than Trump, though.
President Trump came into office promising to balance the budget. Instead, he spent more money in office than every president in the United States history combined, from George Washington to George W. Bush, 283 years of history. President Biden is We'll beat him. He's already run up $6.3 trillion in debt, and by the time he leaves office, he'll have run up more than President Trump. That's why we have inflation. Inflation is caused because they're printing money to pay for these expenses that we don't have, and that money is then a tax on the poor. That's why we have a 22% hike in home insurance. That's why we have $4 milk, $4 bread, $6 gasoline. It's because of the forever wars and the out-of-control spending by these two gentlemen. We have a $34 trillion debt now. The interest alone on that debt is costing us more than our military budget.
That's true.
In 5 years, 50 cents out of every dollar that we collect in taxes will go to servicing the debt. Within 10 years, 100%. This is existential. This is one of the problems that neither of these two will talk about. This is the reason that they need me on stage, because I would confront them with what they did. They were the ones who ran up half of this deficit is attributable to those two men, and that's what's causing inflation. We'll never deal with inflation if we don't deal with the money printing.
But how would you deal with it? I know it's not your mess, but I would like to know how you would deal with it. Yes, you have to stop the money printing, but like he said, eventually all the tax revenue is going to go towards the debt. So how do you solve that?
And according to a new
you just have to borrow more money unless
analysis,
you solve the
President Trump,
issue.
your administration approved $8.4
Sorry,
trillion
I wish I could
in
pause
new debt.
it.
Well, so far, President Biden, you've approved $4.3 trillion in new debt. So, former President Trump, many of the tax cuts that you signed into law are set to expire next year. You want to extend them and go even further, you say. With the U.S. facing trillion-dollar deficits and record debt, why should top earners and corporations pay even less in taxes than they do now?
Because the tax cuts spurred the greatest economy that we've ever seen just prior to COVID. And even after COVID, it was so strong that we were able to get through COVID much better than just about any other country.
And the rich can pay the best accountants to not pay it anyway.
When we cut the taxes, as an example, the corporate tax was cut down to 21% from 39%, plus beyond that. We took in more revenue with much less tax, and companies were bringing back trillions of dollars back into our country. The country was going like never before, and we were ready to start paying down debt.
Some comments, people watching the stream, by the way. Make it fun. Make it interesting.
The oil and gas right under our feet. We were going to have something that
and Biden just allowed them to drill in places, by the way.
We did a lot to fix it. I gave him an unbelievable situation
after on day one,
therapeutics and all of
cutting
the
off
things
the
that we
Keystone
came up
XL.
with. We gave him something great. Remember, more people died.
Operation Warp Speed started under Trump.
Even though we had largely fixed it, more people died under his administration than our administration, and we were right in the middle of it, something which a lot of people don't like to talk about. But he had far more people dying in his administration. He did the mandate, which is a disaster.
I don't know. I'd have to verify that.
He did a mandate on the vaccine.
That would make sense, though, because the pandemic technically lasted longer under Biden.
And he did a very poor job, just a very poor job. And I will tell you, not only poor there, but throughout the entire world, we're no longer respected as a country. They don't respect our leadership.
You're not wrong,
Haley. They don't respect the United States anymore. We're like a third world nation between.
I hope you're not talking about me. I don't consider myself an influencer or elite savior, but
opponent. All of the things
I appreciate. I'm glad that Elon Musk and Robert F. Kennedy are doing this.
The damage he's done to our country. And I'd love to ask him, and will, why he allowed millions of people to come in here from prisons, jails, and mental institutions to come into our country and destroy our country.
Trump is doing what he should be doing thus far.
We will get to immigration later in this block. President Biden, I want to give you an opportunity to respond to this question about the national debt.
He had the largest national debt of any president in a 4-year period, number one.
Except for you.
Number two, that $2 trillion tax cut benefited the very wealthy.
No, that's not true.
Fix the tax system, for example,
benefited me.
We have 1,000 trillionaires in America. I mean, billionaires in America. And what's happening? They're in a situation where they, in fact, pay 8.2% in taxes. If they just paid 24%, 25%, either one of those numbers, they'd raise $500 million,
They use the deductions that are legal under the tax code, which neither one of you did anything about.
Things we need to do, child care, elder care, making sure that we continue to strengthen our healthcare system, making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the with the COVID, with dealing with
Oh,
everything
never
we have
mind.
to do with.
I lost my own bet.
Look, if we
Oh,
finally beat Medicare,
wow.
Thank you,
How?
President Biden. President Trump.
Oh,
Well, he's right.
there
He
it is.
did beat Medicare. He beat it to death, and he's destroying Medicare because all of these people are coming in. They're
What did he
putting them
maybe
on
less 10?
Medicare,
Oh, there he
they're
goes.
putting
He's
them
going
on
to sleep.
Social Security. They're going to destroy Social Security. This man is going to single-handedly destroy Social Security. These millions and millions
Oh,
of
wow.
people coming in, they're
What
trying
did he
to put
last
them
10
on Social
minutes?
Security. He will wipe out Social Security. He will wipe out Medicare. So he was right in the way he finished
Is he
that sentence.
drooling?
And it's a shame. What's happened to our country in the last 4 years is not to be believed. Foreign countries, I'm friends with a lot of people. They cannot believe what happened to the United States of America. We're no longer respected. They don't like us. We give them everything they want, and they think we're stupid. They think we're very stupid people. What we're doing
That's
for other
true.
countries, and they do nothing for us. What this man has done is absolutely criminal.
Mr.
You know,
Kennedy, to give you the
I've
same
spoken to a lot of
question
people who
before
say
they
things
veered
like
off. The question was
that
taxes.
Trump lowered our
Trump
the United
says
States standing in the
lower
world,
taxes,
and
more
if you look
stimulus.
anywhere,
Biden says higher
like
taxes,
anywhere
more money.
objectively,
Thank you,
it's
President.
I think
literally
Trump is, I think,
the
right.
opposite.
He did have a strong economy, but anybody can have a strong economy by borrowing $8 trillion because you're forcing our children to pay for our present day prosperity with this enormous debt,
You're right on, Elite.
which ultimately is paid by the poor, by people with fixed incomes. I want to address the area that they veered into, which is COVID management. This is another illustration about why this is so problematical, because these two presidents shut down every business in our country. 3.3 million businesses.
Trump
with no
didn't
due process,
really.
no just compensation.
That really wasn't Trump.
41% of the black
He left that up to the
businesses that
states.
they closed will never reopen. There was no scientific reason to do this. There was no public hearings. They made a bad mistake, and that was one of the worst financial
technically, that
mistake
wasn't
in American
them.
history. They shifted $4.3 trillion upward to this
Is my
new
commentary
oligarchy of
bothering
billionaires
everyone?
that he was talking about.
I have to
They
do a
created
little
a
bit,
billionaire a
but
day in 500 days.
if it's
And
annoying, I'll try to be
One of
sparing
the
with it.
problems is that CNN was their biggest cheerleader. Oh, and the same company, BlackRock,
It worked. CNN had the ticker, and I called
the
that
same
shit
company,
too.
the biggest shareholders.
There's
the
a video,
company
you
that
can
owns
watch it.
CNN are BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard. Those are the same companies that own Pfizer. Pfizer's the biggest advertiser. So they were all in cahoots.
That's true. Pfizer
in
is the
telling
biggest
us
advertiser
what we
in
needed
CNN.
to do, and we
I
ended
read that.
up
I forget where I read that. But
having the worst record of body count of any country in the world. We had 16% of the COVID deaths under these two presidents. We only have 4% of the world's population. Oh, I don't know why people are getting awards or they're all patting each other on the back. We literally, whatever we were doing was wrong because everybody
minutes
else in
are
the
up.
world did
Back
better
to
than
the
us.
CNN questions.
This is the first presidential election
That's fair,
since
Elite.
the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade.
Oh, good God.
This morning, the court ruled on yet another abortion case, temporarily allowing emergency abortions to continue in Idaho, despite that state's restrictive ban. Former President Trump, you take credit for the decision to overturn Roe v. Wade, which returned the issue of abortion to the states.
Correct.
But it wasn't
However,
him. It was the
The
Supreme
federal
Court.
government still plays a role in whether or not women have access to abortion pills. They're used in about two-thirds
Yeah, dude,
of
I
all
thought
abortions.
Biden was
As
going to last
president,
at least
would
half an
you
hour.
block abortion medication?
First of all, the Supreme Court just
By the
approved
way,
the
hi,
abortion
Sosa.
bill.
They
And
did.
I agree with their decision to have done that, and I will not block it. And if you look at this whole question that you're asking, complex but not really complex. 51 years ago, you had Roe v. Wade, and everybody wanted to get it back to the states. Everybody, without exception. Democrats, Republicans,
that's
liberals,
not true.
conservatives.
It's not true.
Everybody wanted it back. Religious leaders.
It's not
And
true.
what I did is
It's
I
not
put
fucking
three
true
great
at all.
Supreme Court justices on the court, and they happened to vote in favor of killing Roe v. Wade and moving it back to the states. This is
reversed the
something
decision.
that everybody wanted. Now, 10 years ago,
Well, no,
or so,
that's
they
not
started
true.
talking about how many weeks and how many this, getting into other things. But every legal scholar throughout the world, the most
I gave him a
respected
half hour
wanted
because
it
of the
brought
State
back
of the
to the
Union.
states. I did that. Now
I don't
the
know what
states
they
are
gave
working
him,
it
but
out. If you look at Ohio, it was a decision that was an end result that was a little bit more liberal than you would have thought. Kansas,
in
I would say
Ohio?
the same thing. Texas is different.
Oh,
Florida is
I'm
different.
sorry, it got
but they're all
overturned.
making their own decisions right now. And right now, the states control it. That's the vote of the people. Like Ronald Reagan, I believe in the exceptions. I am a person that believes. And frankly, I think it's important to believe in the exceptions. Some people, you have to follow your heart. Some people don't believe in that. But I believe in the exceptions for rape, incest, and the life of the mother. I think it's very important. Some people don't follow
Did
your
Donald
heart.
Trump
but
just say that?
You have to get elected also. And because that has to do with other things. You got to get elected. The problem they have is they're radical because they will take the life of a child in the 8th month, the 9th
Trump
month, and
is
even
shooting
after birth.
a little
If you look
hyperbolic,
at the
but
former governor of Virginia, he was willing to do this. He said, we'll put the baby aside and we'll determine what we do with the baby, meaning we'll kill the baby. What happened is we
that
brought
seems
it back to the
hyperbolic. But
states, and the
I've seen
country is
some
now
crazy,
coming
crazy
together on
stuff.
this issue. It's been a great thing.
Read some
Thank
crazy
you.
stuff.
President Biden?
It's been a terrible thing, what you've done.
Has
The
it?
fact is that
He
the vast
didn't do
majority
it!
of constitutional scholars supported Roe when it was decided. Supported Roe. And
Trump didn't do it. The Supreme Court
idea
did
that
it.
they were all against it is just ridiculous. And this is the guy who says the state should be able to have it. We're in a state where in 6 weeks, you don't even know whether you're pregnant or not, but you cannot see a doctor and have him decide on what your circumstances are, whether you need help. The idea that states are able to do this is a little like saying we're going to turn civil rights back to the states. Let each state have a different rule.
That's a
Look,
valid
there's so
point.
many young women who have been, including a young woman who just was murdered, and he went
Well,
to
there
the
was a
funeral.
constitutional amendment.
The idea that she was murdered by an immigrant coming in. They talk about that, but here's the deal.
What are you
There's a lot
talking
of
about?
young women are being raped by their in-laws, by their spouses, brothers and sisters, it's just ridiculous. And they
I
can
don't
do
think
nothing
there's a
about
law,
it.
and
they
most
try to arrest them when they
most
cross state lines.
mandates have exceptions for rape
There have
and
been
incest.
many young women murdered by the same people he allows to come across our border. We have a border that's the most dangerous place anywhere in the
Stay
world.
on Trump.
Considered the
Well,
most dangerous place anywhere in the world. And he opened it up, and these killers are coming into our country, and they are
RFK
raping
wants
and
to say
killing
something.
women. And it's a terrible thing. As far as the abortion is concerned, it is now back with the states. The states are voting. In many cases, it's frankly a very liberal decision. In many cases, it's the opposite. But they're voting.
By the way,
and it's
everybody,
bringing
if
it
you're
back to the
watching, if
vote
you
of the
haven't
people,
already,
which
please
is what
subscribe.
everybody wanted, including the founders, if they knew about this issue, which frankly they
And
didn't.
like the video.
But they would have.
Por favor.
Everybody wanted brought back. Ronald Reagan wanted it brought back. He wasn't able to get it. Everybody wanted it brought back, and many
I
presidents
know
have tried
he's
to
chomping
get
at
it
the
back.
bit.
I was the one
RFK
do
wants
it.
to
And
talk.
again, this gives it the vote of the people, and that's where they wanted it. Every legal scholar wanted it that way.
He's ready to pounce. Oh,
Your
finally.
position on Roe v. Wade.
I've spent probably more energy protecting medical freedom than any other leader in this country. And bodily autonomy. So I think that abortion should be the choice of a woman. And
He's been
that I
pretty
worry
consistent on
about
this.
state involvement until their baby reaches viability. And I think the states have an increasing
Yeah, but what's viability? That's the problem.
outside the womb.
Oh,
And I think the states have
read my
an
mind.
increasing interest
Maybe
in
he's
protecting that
watching.
child. My policy on abortion is called more choice, fewer abortions. And that's because 52% of the abortions in this country, the woman says that economic considerations played the key role in her decision. Every abortion is a tragedy.
I don't know if that's accurate,
Many
but I
women
believe
don't want
it.
to have abortions. Over half of them have them because they do not believe that they can care for that child for financial reasons. I don't think that should happen in this country. I have a child care program. As I talked to you before, every dollar that we spend on weapons provides about 2 jobs. Every $1 million that we spend on weapons provides 2 jobs, creates 2 jobs. Every $1 million that we spend on child care creates 22 jobs. It's good for our economy. It's good for choice. It's good for limiting abortions, and that's what I'll do as president.
I don't have many notes.
Abortion, President Biden, 7 states, I'll let you do that. This is the same topic. 7 states have no legal
confused.
restrictions on how far into a pregnancy a woman can obtain an abortion. Do you support any legal limits on how late a woman should be able to terminate a pregnancy?
I supported Roe v. Wade, which had 3 trimesters. The first time is between the woman and the doctor. Second time is between the doctor and an extreme situation. The third time is between the doctor, between the woman and the state. That
depends on the state.
The idea that the politicians, that the founders wanted the politicians to be the ones
Okay, that's
making
fair,
decisions
but
about
come
women's
on.
health
I'm trying to
is
be fair.
ridiculous. That's the last. No politician should be making that decision. A doctor should be making those decisions. That's how it should be run. That's what
Trump,
you're going to do. And
Trump blue stealing over there.
Roe v. Wade.
So that means he can take the life of the baby in the 9th month and even after birth, because some
I assume you're
states
talking
have
about
let
Trump,
run
or are you talking about
take it after
RFK?
birth. Again,
Because
the
honestly, I
governor,
think
former
Trump's done the
governor of
best so
Virginia,
far.
put the baby down, then we decide what to do with it. So he's willing to, as we say, rip the baby out of the womb in the 9th month and kill the baby. Nobody wants that to happen, Democrat or Republican. Nobody wants it to happen.
That is simply not true. That Roe v. Wade does not provide for that. That's not the circumstance. Only if a woman's life is in danger,
That's
she's going
not
to
what
die.
he said.
That's the only circumstance in which that can happen. But we are not for late-term abortion, period.
That's true, Haley. You never said you were going to
Roe
be
v.
fair.
Wade, you have late-term abortion. You
No,
can do
you
whatever
do
you
not.
want,
You do
depending on
not.
the state.
No.
You can do whatever you want.
No,
we don't
that
think
is
that's
not
a good
true.
thing. We think it's a radical thing. We
That
think
is
the
not true.
Democrats are the
Third
radicals,
trimester
not
is
the
off
Republicans.
limits under Roe v.
51
Wade.
years, that was the law. 51 years, constitutional scholarship said it was the right way to go. 51 years, and it was taken
Yeah, what
away
Trump
because
said
this
is
guy
not true.
Put very conservative members on the Supreme Court. He takes credit for taking it away. What's he going to do?
And ironically,
What's he
with it
gonna
in the
do,
hands of
fact,
the
if
states now,
if
theoretically, a
the
state like
MAGA
California
Republicans, he gets
could
elected, and
legalize
the MAGA
late-term
Republicans control
abortions.
the
Under
Congress,
Roe v.
and
Wade,
they
they could
pass
not.
a universal ban on abortion, period, across the board at 6 weeks or 7 or 8 or 10 weeks, something very, very conservative. Is he going to sign that bill? I'll veto it. He'll sign it.
Oh, cool, Sosa.
To give you the same question, Mr. Kennedy, should there be any limit on a late-term abortion?
Yeah, I believe it should be limited. Late term should be limited. Absolutely. That's what was permitted under Roe v. Wade. That's what every European country has the same law.
I don't think every
sense.
European.
If that baby is fully viable outside of the womb, the state has an absolute interest in protecting it.
That was probably the best answer of the 3.
To the issue of immigration and border security, President Biden, a record number of migrants have illegally crossed the southern border on your watch. Overwhelming border states and overburdening cities such as New York and Chicago, and in some cases causing real safety and security concerns. Given that, why should voters trust you to solve this crisis?
Because we worked very hard to get a bipartisan agreement that not only
Oh, fuck all
changed
you
of
did.
that, it made sure that
You
we
did
were in a
not.
situation where
You pretended like you
had
couldn't for
no
3 years, and
circumstance
then
where they
all of
could
a
come
sudden
across
you
the
could.
border with the number of border police there are now. We significantly increased the number of asylum officers. By the way, the Border Patrol endorsed my position.
Ooh.
In addition to that, we
I've
found
not heard a
ourselves in
single
situation where
agent being
when he was
interviewed
president,
endorse
he was
you.
separating babies from their mothers,
Go.
putting them in cages.
Don't go there.
making sure
That started
the
under
families
Obama.
were separated.
And you're
That's
still
not the
doing
right
it,
way to
you
go.
lying,
What
you
I've done
liar.
since I've changed the law, what's happened? I've changed.
I
it in a
thought you
way that
couldn't change
now
the law.
You're in a situation where there are 40% fewer people coming across the border
That's
legally.
bullshit. That
It's
is
better than
not
he left
true.
office.
That is not.
I'm
No,
continuing
that is a
to do
lie.
Total ban.
That is a
on
fucking
the-
lie.
the
That is
total
not
initiative
true at all.
Relative to what we're going to do with more
Verifiably
border patrol
false.
and more
Did a video on
asylum
it.
officers.
President Trump?
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either. Look, we had the safest border in the history of our country.
I don't know about
All he had
that.
to do was leave it. All he had to do was leave it. He decided to open up our border, open up our country to people that are from prisons, people that are from mental institutions, insane asylum, terrorists. We have the largest number of terrorists coming into our country right now. All terrorists,
That's
all
probably
over the world,
true.
not just in South
They had like
America.
400
all over the
arrests
world. They come
recently.
from the Middle East, everywhere. All
And then
over
just
the world,
again, they're looking
pouring
for
in.
400 some odd
And this
people
guy
that came
just
across
left it
with
open. And he didn't need
ISIS-linked trafficker
legislation
group.
because I didn't have legislation. I said close the border. We had the safest border in history. In that final couple of months of my
You didn't
presidency,
close it, but
we had, according to Border Patrol, who is great,
Well, I
and
guess
by the way, who
technically you
endorsed
did.
me for president, but I won't say that, but they endorsed me for president. Brandon, just speak to him. But look, we had the safest border in history. Now we have the worst border in history. There's never been anything like it. And people are dying all over the place, including the people that are coming up in
Thank you,
caravans.
President Trump. President Biden?
The only terrorist who's done anything crossing the border is one who came along and killed three, under his administration, killed an Al-Qaeda person come in his administration,
That's
killed three
not true.
American soldiers, killed 3 American soldiers. That's
That's
the
a
only
lie.
terrorist that's there. I'm not saying no terrorist ever got through, but the idea...
They just
they're
arrested
emptying their
people
prisons.
across
We're
like 20 some odd
welcoming these
people across 4
That's
different
simply
cities
not
that
true.
were all
There's
linked to
no
Al
data
Qaeda.
to support what he said. Once again, he's exaggerating. He's lying.
CNN?
Mr.
You want
Kennedy,
fact check
what
that?
would you do about the border?
Well, I would say that on this one, President Trump is more right than President Biden. I think almost
I would hope that the
everything
Republican
that
was more right.
President Biden said, I know to be not to be true, including his claim that he was endorsed by the Border Patrol.
I didn't think so.
And the border, there's been at least 7 million people who've come across the
Maybe there
border,
was
and
one
they've
Border
come
Patrol
across
guy.
Principally, and this is without the gotaways, which are another 2 million. So those are the people who don't go through the gaps in the wall. President Biden, when he became president, ordered a stop on the construction of the wall. That's the problem. There are 27 gaps in the wall, and I stood in Yuma, Arizona.
Really? So.
Between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. in the morning, and I watched 300 people come across, and I interviewed
I hadn't seen
half
that.
of them.
I'm not doubting you. I just haven't seen that.
110 came from West Africa. They're young men of military age. The second 110
That's
were
true. RFK
from,
went to the border.
From
Saw the
Asia,
video.
from Azerbaijan, from Nepal, from Tibet, from Bangladesh. Most of them were from China. None of them, only 2 people the entire night that I interviewed had asylum claims. Only 2 people, and they were both the only people from Latin America, from Colombia and Peru. I think what President
That's true.
Trump
Again,
is
you
saying,
can find that video.
I don't know
that he's
how many
talking
terrorists
about.
have come across. I know the Border Patrol is extremely worried about that. And what's happening is not sustainable. President Biden ordered the
But he can't interrupt because the mics are muted when it's not their turn. I love it.
Down.
I actually like
I
this.
can't tell you why. The long distance cameras were taken down. The night lights were taken down. So there was some decision in the administration to open up the border, and then the 2 laws that were changed under President Biden, and this is the day that he came in, the catch and release law, and
Time is up. Sorry. Back to the CNN debate.
And you've said that you're going to carry out, quote, the largest domestic deportation operation in American history, unquote.
And see, this I
Does that
don't
mean
agree
that
with
you
at
will
all.
deport every undocumented immigrant in America, including those who have jobs, including those whose spouses are citizens, and including those who have lived here for decades? And if so, how will you do it?
Just 1 second. He said we killed 3 people. The people we killed are al-Baghdadi and Soleimani, the 2 greatest terrorists, biggest terrorists anywhere in the world. And it had a huge impact on everything, not just
al-Baghdadi,
on everything.
He died like a
He's the one that
dog.
killed people with a bad
Said, why are you crying, Abu?
Hundreds of thousands
I
of
wouldn't
people
have
dying,
cried.
and also killing our
That's for you,
citizens when
Eric.
they come in. We are living right now in a rat's nest. They're killing our people in New York, in California, in every state.
Yeah, that's
in the
cool.
union,
Don't touch on
because
the
we don't
mass
have borders
deportation
anymore.
thing.
Every state is now a border. And because of his ridiculous, insane, and very stupid policies, people are coming in and they're killing our citizens at a level that we've never seen. We call it migrant crime. I call it Biden migrant crime. They're killing our citizens at a level that we've never seen before. And you're reading it like these 3 incredible young girls over the last few days. One of them, I just spoke to the mother, and they just had the funeral for this girl, 12 years old. This is horrible what's taken place. What's taken place in our country, we're literally an uncivilized country now. He doesn't want it to be. He just doesn't know. He opened the borders. Nobody's ever seen anything like it.
I hope they touch
we
on
have to
the
get a lot of these people out, and we have to get them out fast because they're going
pro-Palestine
to destroy our
encampments.
country. Just take a look at where they're living. They're living in luxury hotels in New York City and other places. Our veterans are on the street. They're
This
dying
is
because
true.
he doesn't care about our veterans. He doesn't care. He doesn't like the military at all. And he doesn't care about our veterans. Nobody been
I'm talking
worse.
about the
I had the
veterans living on the
highest
street.
approval rating for veterans taking
I don't
care
know
of
what's
the
in
VA.
Biden's mind.
He has the worst. He's gotten rid of all the things that I approved. Choice that I got through Congress, all of the different things I approved, they abandoned. We had by far the highest, and now it's down in less than half because he's done all these great things that we did. And I think he did it just because I approved it, which is crazy. But he has killed so
That's
many
probably
people
true.
at our border by
Thank you.
allowing
Biden did that
all
with
of
a
these
lot of
people
Trump
to come
policies.
in. And
President
it's a
Biden?
very sad day in America.
President Biden, you have the mic.
Every single thing he said is a lie. Every single one.
No,
For
that's a
example,
lie.
Veterans are a hell of a lot better off since I passed the PACT Act. 1 million of them now have insurance, and their families have it. Their families have it because what happened, whether it was Agent Orange or burn pits, they're all being covered now. And his group opposed that. We're also in a situation where
I don't
we have great
think
respect
that's
for
true.
veterans.
I'd have to
my
look
son
that up.
spent a year in Iraq, living right next to one of those burn pits, came back with stage 4 glioblastoma. I was recently in
I don't know what you're saying no
France
to, Sosa.
for D-Day. And I spoke all about those
Dang it.
heroes that died. I went to the World War II cemetery, World War I cemetery he refused to go to. He was standing with his 4-star general, and he told me, he said, I don't want to go in there because they're a bunch of losers and
Can you tell me
suckers."
what I got
My
wrong,
son was not
Sosa?
a loser, was not a sucker. You're the sucker. You're the loser.
President Trump?
First of all, that was a made-up quote, suckers and losers. They made it up. It was in a third-rate magazine that's failing, like many
That's
of these
true.
magazines.
I did see the fact check on
He
that.
made that up. He put it in commercials. We've notified him. We had 19 people that said I didn't say it. And think of this. Who would say I'm at a cemetery or I'm talking about our veterans? Because nobody's taken better care. I'm so glad this came up, and he brought it up. There's nobody that's taken better care of our soldiers than I have. To think that I would, in front of generals and others, say suckers and losers. We have 19 people that said it was never said by me. It was made up by him, just like Russia was made up. Just like
I'm
the
sorry,
51
Sosa, I don't know what you're
intelligence
talking
agents
about.
are made up. Just like the new thing with the 16
Are
economists.
you talking about Roe v.
talking,
Wade?
It's the same thing. 51 intelligence agents said that the laptop was Russia disinformation. It wasn't. That came from his son, Hunter. It wasn't Russia disinformation. He made up the suckers and losers, so he should apologize to me right now.
4-star general standing to your side who was on your staff who said you said it, period. That's number one. And number two, the idea that I have to apologize to you for anything along the line. We've done more for veterans than any president has in American history. And they now are in their family. The only sacred obligation we have as a country is to care for our veterans when they come home.
Shoot me a text
and their
about it,
families,
Sosa.
And equip them when they go to war.
'Cause I wanna
That's
know.
what we're doing. That's what the VA is doing now. They're doing more for veterans than ever before in our history.
Mr. Kennedy, the question which neither candidate answered was, there are
That's true.
millions
Neither one
of
did answer.
undocumented immigrants in the country now. What would you do?
Well, I want to comment on their digressions. Because I think President Trump is
don't go
right
down that
there's
road.
a lot of bad people coming across. I think that's undisputed, and we're seeing rises in crime that are associated with the immigrants. But more importantly, there's just a sheer number of them. And I think a lot of the Democrats allowed this to happen out of a humanitarian impulse, out of the impulse of compassion. But when you're actually down there and talking to people, it's not a compassionate solution. The people that I talk to, many of them have been extorted, they've been exploited, they've been
I know,
robbed,
right?
they've
He
been
said,
raped.
Brandon.
We have an immigration policy in this country that is now being run by the Sinaloa drug cartel. The Border Patrol takes, because they've been ordered not to do their job, they're, catch and release.
That's
They bring them to
true.
the
That's
Yuma
verified.
Airport, put them on a plane to any destination they want. This is true. It sounds like hyperbole, but it's not. And they pay their ticket. And they get reimbursement from FEMA. It's insane. There's 110,000 immigrants now in New York, and President Trump's right. They're being put up at hotels. Many of them are on the street. They have a asylum court date 7 years in the future. They can't legally work, so they're taken advantage of by predatory employers.
Yep.
We're paying them $6 or $8 an hour,
That's
and
fucking true.
and those employers
The
are
whole
bidding
system's
against
broken.
union shops.
Yep.
We're getting paid $35
And
or
something that
$50 an hour.
nobody's
The union shops
talking
are losing the
about.
bid.
The bullshit
There
people have to
they
go
are
through to get a
camped
work
out
permit
in
so they can
Randall's
work
Island
legally
on
in this
playing
country.
fields where the children are supposed to be playing
Even people who come legally, by the way.
for sports. Those fields were closed during COVID. So these kids, these wonderful New York City kids, were scholarship tracked, could not play their sport, and their lives were, and now they're being, the same thing's happening. They can't play their sport because
Which, by the way,
Time is up here. Now,
podcast is brought to you in
did
part
not
by
answer the
Stevie
question.
Wicks,
Back to CNN.
and their Independence Day candles are currently
Topic of foreign
available
policy.
at
I want to begin with
steviewicks.com.
Russia's war
So get yours
against
today.
Ukraine, which is now in its third year. Former President Trump, Russian President Vladimir Putin says he'll only end this war if Russia keeps the Ukrainian territory it has already claimed and Ukraine abandons its bid to join NATO. Are Putin's terms acceptable to you?
First of all, our veterans and our soldiers can't stand this guy.
Lord.
They can't stand him. They think he's the worst
Can we answer the
commander-in-chief,
question,
if that's what you
please?
call him, that we've ever had. They can't stand him. So let's get that straight. And
I don't know why you're laughing,
just about
Robert.
any of them. And that's based on every single bit of information. As far as Russia,
I mean,
and
I've
Ukraine,
heard a lot of
if we
veterans
had a
and
real
active duty
president, the
soldiers
president
on
that
various
knew,
places
that was
say that.
respected by Putin, he would have never invaded Ukraine. A lot of people are dead right now, much more than people know. You know, they talk about numbers. You can double those numbers, maybe triple those numbers. He did nothing to stop it. In fact, I think he encouraged Russia from going in. I'll tell you what happened. He was so bad with Afghanistan. It was
In
such
a way,
a
I would
horrible
agree with that.
embarrassment, most embarrassing moment in the history of our country, that when Putin watched that,
They're
and he saw the
politicians, Haley. They
incompetence,
never
that he
answer
should-
questions.
He should have fired those generals like I fired
And
the one that you
to be
mentioned.
fair,
And so
I
he's
think
got
Trump
no
was
love
smart
lost.
not to
But he should have
answer that
fired those
question
generals.
because
no general got fired
I'm
for
against
the
that
most embarrassing
mass deportation
moment in the
pipe dream
history
of
of our
his.
country, Afghanistan, where we left billions of dollars of equipment behind. We lost 13 beautiful soldiers, and 38 soldiers were obliterated. And by the way, we left people behind too. We left American citizens behind. When
did.
Putin saw that, he
I'm
said,
curious to see
"You know
what Joe will say
I
about-
think we're going to
about
go in
that."
and maybe take my." This was his dream. I talked to him about it. His
I said it
dream.
before.
The difference
I
is
said it at the
he
time, and I'll
never
say it
would have
again.
Invaded Ukraine.
I
Never.
agree.
Just like Israel would have never been invaded in a million years by Hamas.
I don't know
You
about a
why?
million years, but
Because Iran was broke with me. I wouldn't let anybody do business with them. They ran out of money. They were broke. They had no money for Hamas. They had no money for anything. No money for terror. That's why you had no terror at all during my administration. This place, the whole world is blowing up under him.
President Biden?
I've never heard so much malarkey in my whole life. Look, the fact of the matter is that we're in a situation where, let's take the last point first. Iran attacked American troops, caused brain damage for a number of these troops, and he did nothing about it. Recently, not when he was president. They attacked. He said they're just having headaches. That's all it is. He didn't do a thing when the attack took place, number one. Number two.
yeah, I think
we got
I believe you're
100,000
talking about
Americans and others
Planned
out
Parenthood.
of Afghanistan during that era.
I could be wrong.
Number three, we found ourselves in
I
a
don't
situation
have it fresh in my
where
mind.
if you take a look at what Trump did in Ukraine.
Oh, I
he's-
think
this guy told
okay.
Ukraine- told
I
Trump,
okay. Yeah,
do whatever
yeah.
you want. Do whatever you want. And that's exactly what Trump did
That's
to Putin, encourage him, do whatever you want. And
That
he
is
went in.
not-
Listen to what he said when he went in. He was going to take Kyiv in 5 days, remember? Because it's part of the old Soviet Union.
Yeah, they
That's
almost
what he wanted
did.
to reestablish. Kyiv. And he, in fact, didn't do it at all. He didn't.
And it was pronounced Kiev
and
until
they've lost over,
the war.
They've lost thousands and thousands of troops, 500,000 troops.
President Trump,
I
as I
never
come back
said
to you
that.
for 1 minute, I just want to go back to my original question, which is, are Putin's terms acceptable to you? Keeping the
No, they're
territory
not
in Ukraine?
acceptable. No, they're not
I assume you're
acceptable.
talking about
But look, this is
third
a war that
trimester
never
being
should have
off
started.
limits.
If we had
So-
a leader in this war, he led everybody along. He's given $200 billion now or more to Ukraine. He's given $200 billion. That's a lot of money. I don't think there's ever been anything like it. Every time that Zelensky comes to this country, he walks away with $60 billion. He's the greatest salesman ever. And I'm not knocking him. I'm not knocking anything. I'm only saying the money that we're spending on this war, and we shouldn't be spending, it should have never happened. I will have that war settled between Putin and Zelensky as president-elect before I take office on January 20th.
Oh, no, Sosa, you are correct. I was
People
mistaken.
being killed
After the
so
second trimester,
needlessly,
the
so
fetus became
stupidly,
viable, and
I
the
will
state
get it
could
settled,
regulate
and
or
I'll get
outlaw
it settled
abortion
fast before
in
I
the
take
interests
office.
of the potential
And
life,
Biden, you
except
have a
when
minute.
necessary to preserve the life or health of the
The fact
mother.
is that Putin is a war criminal. He's killed
So I
thousands and
was
thousands
a little
of
bit
people.
off.
And he has
Yep,
made one
you're-
thing clear. He wants to reestablish what was part
So
of the
they're not
Soviet
supposed
Empire,
to, but I'm
not
sure
just a
there were
piece. He
plenty
wants
of
all of Ukraine. That's what
loopholes
he
that
wants.
the
And then you
organization
think he'll
you
stop
spoke
there?
of.
Do you think he'll stop when if he takes Ukraine? What do you think happens to Poland? What do you think of Belarus? What do you think happens to those NATO countries?
Well, Belarus is
And so
already
if
his
you want a war,
partner.
you ought to find out what
And if he
he's gonna
invades
do,
Poland, he's
because
effectively
if in fact he does what
declared
he
war on
says and
NATO.
walks away. And by the way, all that money we give Ukraine are from weapons we make here in the United States. We give them the weapons, not the money at this point. And our NATO
That's
allies
not
have
true.
produced as much
Oh, it's not
funding
accurate.
for Ukraine as we have.
That's not
why
true.
That's why we're strong.
Mr. Kennedy, the original question, if anyone remembers it, is it was a good one. It's you say you want to negotiate with Putin. What if Putin says, just let us keep the territory we have and don't have Ukraine join NATO? Acceptable?
That is Putin's, right now, his opening bargaining position. Putin has been asking to settle this war from the beginning. In fact, he agreed to 2 separate treaties, the Minsk Accords, in 2019, which Zelensky ran in 2019 and ran promising to sign the Minsk Accords. And really the only thing Putin wanted was to keep NATO out of the Ukraine. He then, in 2022, right after he first invaded with only 40,000 troops, when President Biden said there is absolute baloney, President Putin did not go into Ukraine intending to conquer Europe. He only sent 40,000 troops. It's a nation of 44 million people. He didn't even want to take Ukraine. He wanted us back at the negotiating table. Zelensky asked the United States to help him negotiate a treaty with Putin. And Biden administration said no. Zelensky then went and asked Israel, and Naftali Bennett, the former prime minister, said yes, and Erdogan in Turkey said yes, and they negotiated a beautiful treaty in Istanbul in April of 2022.
I believe he's referring to the Minsk
One thing that
Accords.
Putin wanted was that we didn't put NATO in Ukraine. He didn't want to conquer Europe.
Ukraine and
And
NATO.
They signed it. Putin was withdrawing his troops, leaving Donbass and Lugansk. And what happened? President Joe Biden sent Boris Johnson over to Kiev and forced Zelensky to tear up that agreement because they had another agenda,
Yep.
which is to weaken Russia. President Trump was part of it. President Trump gave the first $1.3 billion to Ukraine in 2017 of the
As
first offensive
a
weapons.
check
He then
measure
sent Mike
against
Pompeo over there
Russian
in
aggression.
2019 to say that we're going to put NATO there. So, and then he walked away from the intermediate range nuclear treaty
Yeah, you were.
with Russia unilaterally. We had a nuclear weapons treaty that we wouldn't put intermediate missiles in Ukraine or the other former Soviet satellite states. And President Trump walked away from it. So the two of them
Oh,
are
Sosa, I know where I was
equally
getting mixed up.
culpable.
I know where I was getting mixed up
in the
because at the third
provocations that led
trimester,
to this war. I'm not
there is
excusing
not
Putin.
federal
Putin didn't need
protection
to go into
for abortion.
Ukraine.
I was thinking
And he
about it
should be
wrong.
held
You
responsible
were
too.
totally right.
We need to look at our responsibility, and it falls
But
both
that's
on
that's
the
what
backs
was in
of
my
President
head.
Trump and President Biden.
See, I can admit when I'm wrong.
To the Middle East. In October, Hamas attacked Israel, killing more than 1,000 people and taking hundreds of hostages. Among those held and thought to still be alive are 5 Americans. Israel's response has killed thousands of Palestinians and created a humanitarian crisis in Gaza. President Biden, you've put forward a proposal to resolve this conflict. But so far, Hamas has not released the remaining hostages, and Israel is continuing its military offensive in Gaza. So what additional leverage will you use to get Hamas and Israel to end the war? You have 2 minutes.
Number one.
Oh, this should be good.
Everyone from the United Nations Security Council straight through to the G7, to the Israelis,
today,
Netanyahu
Junior
himself have endorsed the plan I put forward.
Okay, what is the
which
plan?
has 3 stages to it.
Okay.
The first stage is trade the hostages for a ceasefire. Second phase is a ceasefire with additional conditions. The third phase is the end of the war. The only one who wants the war to continue is Hamas.
Okay,
one.
that's
They're the only ones standing out. We're still pushing hard to get them to accept. In the meantime,
Hamas won't accept it.
In
but
Israel, we're trying to say the only thing I've denied Israel was 2,000-pound bombs. They don't work very well in populated areas. They kill a lot of innocent people. We're providing Israel with all the weapons they need and when they need them. And by the way, I'm the guy that organized the world against Iran when they had a full-blown intercontinental ballistic missile attack on Israel. No one was hurt.
Thanks to you.
One Israeli was accidentally killed, and it just stopped.
That is true, though.
We saved Israel. We are the biggest producer of support for Israel of anyone in the world.
No,
And
the
so
United States is.
they're two different things.
That's accurate.
Hamas cannot be allowed to be continued. We continue
In spite
to send
of
our
you,
experts
arguably.
and our intelligence people as to how they can get Hamas like we did bin Laden.
Oh, the
They don't have to do
pro-Palestinian
it.
crowd
And by the
is,
way, they've been greatly weakened, Hamas.
probably
Greatly
screaming in
weakened,
the
and
streets.
They should be eliminated. But you've got to be careful for using certain weapons among population centers.
Just going back to Ukraine for 1
I don't know.
second.
Does anybody know?
We have an ocean separating us.
Does anybody know if that's
The
fair,
European
if that's
nations
accurate about
together
those? I would assume
have
so.
spent 100
Those larger
billion,
bombs,
or maybe
but
more than that, less than us. Why doesn't he call them and say, you got to put up your money like I did with NATO? I got them to put up hundreds of billions of dollars. The Secretary General of NATO said Trump did the most incredible job I've ever seen. They wouldn't have any. They were going out of business. We were spending almost 100% of the money was paid by us. He didn't do that. He's getting all. You got to ask these people to put up the money. We're over $100 billion more spent, and it has a bigger impact on them because of location, because we have an ocean in between. You got to ask them. As far as Israel and Hamas, Israel's the one that wants to go. He said the only one that wants to keep going is Hamas. Actually, Israel is the one, and you should let him go and let him finish the job.
Okay.
He doesn't want to do it. He's become like a Palestinian, but they don't like him because he's a very bad Palestinian. He's a weak one.
President Biden, you have
I
a minute.
don't know what the
I've never
fuck
heard
you were
so
trying to
much
say.
foolishness. This is a guy who wants to get out of NATO. Are you going to stay in NATO? He's going to pull out of NATO. The idea that we have our strength lies in our alliances as well.
No, our
There may be a
strength
big
lies
ocean, but
apparently
if we're
in
able
giving
to avoid a
weapons
war
and
in
money
in
to
Europe, a major war in
the Western
Europe,
Hemisphere,
what
Europe,
happens if,
and then
in fact,
some.
You have Putin continue to go into NATO. We have an Article 5 agreement.
He didn't
Attack
go
on
into
one is
NATO.
Attack on all. You want to start the nuclear war he keeps talking about, go ahead. Let Putin go in and control Ukraine and then move on to Poland and other places. See what happens then. He has no idea what the hell he's talking about. And by the way, I got 50 other nations around the world to support Ukraine, including Japan and South Korea, because they understand that this
I don't know that you
dislocation
got them to
has
do
a
that,
serious
though.
threat to the whole world peace. No major war in Europe has ever been able to be contained. Just
Hello to everybody watching who may or may not have just joined us, by the
Again,
way.
Mr.
Throw
Kennedy,
some
you may have
comments in there
forgotten
if you would in the
original
live
question,
chat.
which was, as president, what leverage would you use to get Hamas and Israel to end the war?
Well, I would have used more diplomacy from the beginning.
Yeah, but you can't use
I-
diplomacy against a
I think
terrorist
we have
organization.
To recognize a couple of things. One is we're a nation of compassion. All of us are heartbroken by seeing the bloodshed that's happening in Gaza. All of us
Then don't start a
are
war.
affected and horrified by the injuries to the civilians in Gaza and the
I mean,
damage
yeah,
to
but that's on Hamas
the innocents in Gaza.
for the most part.
We also have to understand that Israel is in an existential battle now, and that Hamas, which is a genocidal organization, which is pledged to Israel's annihilation, it's pledged to the extermination of Jews.
He said it
And
before
it
I
does
did.
not want a two-state solution. It wants a one-state solution.
And for
which is
everybody who
Israel
says that that's
gone.
not in the
And
Hamas
it
charter,
actually
yes,
has
it
in its
is.
charter a provision that says that it is against Islamic law to even negotiate with Israel. Oh, Israel's in a five-front war with Hamas, which is a proxy of Iran, with the Shia militias in Iraq and Syria, with Hezbollah, these are all proxies of Iran, in Lebanon, and with the Houthis in Yemen. And it's being attacked on two fronts right now. It is at full war with Hezbollah. And we have to let Israel disarm Hamas. We have to support them. Israel's our oldest ally. It is the only democracy in the Mideast. If you can imagine,
I don't know about our oldest ally. No, I would think Great Britain would be our oldest ally.
In 80 years, people are entertaining that possibility. And in 5 or 10 years, Israel may not exist because
I'm pretty sure that's
dealing with weakened forces that they were in the 2000s and 1967 and 1956, etc. Hezbollah
that goes
is
back
the
to at
most
least
proficient
prior to
army in the world
1914.
in probably in history. Iran is now a superpower.
No, France. I'm sorry, France is our oldest ally.
To maintain a war. So we need, and to wipe out Israel.
Can't believe I didn't think of that yet. France is our oldest ally.
Diplomacy, and the people in the White House are not capable of doing that.
They are insulted right now in Paris watching this debate.
President Putin. We even need to be negotiating with Iran. And the neocons in the White House see this as us as a bipolar world where the United States is dominating the world and won't negotiate with anybody. And that is the problem that caused
Well, no, they won't negotiate with terrorists.
Support the creation of an independent Palestinian state in order to achieve peace in the region?
I'd have to see, but before we do that, the problem we have
is
that we spend all the money. So they kill us on trade. I made great trade deals with the European nations because if you add them up, they're about the same size economically. Their economy is about the same size as the United States. And they were no cars, they don't want anything that we have, but we're supposed to take their cars, their food, their everything, their agriculture. I changed that. But the big thing I changed is they don't want to pay. And the only reason that he can play games with NATO is because I got them to put up hundreds of billions of dollars. I said, and he's right about this. I said, no.
I don't know if every single bit is accurate, but there have been several NATO leaders, including former president of the Netherlands, that actually said, yeah, Trump called their bluff and we spent more and we're happy we did.
At that time. And they said, no, if you don't pay, I won't do that. And you know what happened? Billions and billions of dollars came flowing in the next day and the next months.
Yeah, I agree, Sosa. I don't know that reaction, while funny, I don't know if it was smart.
The question was actually, would you support an independent Palestinian state?
I'd like to answer the NATO question. I think that
you've got 2 minutes for what you do with it.
NATO.
Sasha's being kind of a dick, and I'm kind of here for it.
When NATO was created, it was a bulwark against Soviet expansion. President Eisenhower said in 1959, if we do our job with NATO, it will be gone in 10 years.
There could be, Sosa, but it couldn't be run by Hamas. It would have to be run by a non-religious authority, and I think it's going to take
ideology that is
it's going to take generations.
It's bankrupt. We have a huge
minimum
budget. We have double
minimum
the
two, I think,
that we had in real
for the
dollars.
Palestinian people, the Palestinian Arabs that aren't integrated into Israel proper.
For self-defense.
Money is to be in a state where they could coexist,
and to make America.
So not now. I think that's out of the question now.
NATO is the instrument of that. I'm not going to abolish NATO. I'm going to change the function of NATO so that it becomes an instrument of peace and not an instrument of U.S. global domination abroad.
I think you could easily turn NATO into a peacekeeping organization, sort of like NATO peacekeepers, but with some actual backbone.
Palestinian state.
I think that has to be decided between Israel and Palestine.
Back to CNN.
Oh no, you're right, Sosa. The vast majority, and that's what nobody ever wants to talk about.
President Trump I want to ask you about January 6, 2021. After you rallied your supporters that day, some of them stormed the Capitol to stop the constitutionally mandated counting of electoral votes. As president, you swore an oath to, quote, preserve, protect, and defend, unquote, the Constitution. What do you say to voters who believe that you violated that oath through your actions and inaction?
I mean, because
January
UN
6th, and worry
peacekeeping,
that
like
you'll do
even
it
if you
again?
go back to
Well, I don't think too
Rwanda,
many
they were
believe that. And
virtually
let me tell you about
useless.
January 6th. On
If
January
you ever
6th,
seen Hotel
we had a
Rwanda,
great border.
it
Nobody
dramatizes it,
coming
but it
through, very few. On
showcases
January
that.
6th, we were energy independent. On January 6th, we had the lowest taxes ever. We had the lowest regulations ever. On January 6th, we were respected all over the world. All over the world, we were respected. And then he comes in, and we're
I
now
wouldn't go
laughed
that
at.
far.
We're like a bunch of stupid people. What happened to the United States' reputation under this man's leadership is horrible, including weaponization, which I'm sure at some point you'll be talking about, where he goes after his political opponent because he can't beat him fair and
That
square.
is some Banana
You
Republic
have
shit.
80 seconds left. My question was, what do you say to those voters who believe that you violated your constitutional oath through your actions and inaction on January 6, 2021, and worry that you'll do it again?
Well, I didn't say that to anybody. I said peacefully and patriotically. And Nancy Pelosi, if you just watched the news from 2 days ago, on tape to her daughter, who's a documentary filmmaker, they say.
Filmmaker?
But she's saying, oh, no, it's my responsibility. I was responsible for this.
Does she
Because I offered her
document Kafifi?
10,000 soldiers or National Guard, and she turned them down. And the mayor of, in writing, by the way, the mayor, in writing, turned it down, the mayor of D.C. They turned it down. I offered 10,000 because I could see, I had virtually nothing to do. They asked me to go make a speech. I could see what was happening. Everybody was saying they're going to be there on January 6th. They're going to be there. And I said, you know what? There's a
Yeah,
lot
that's
of
probably
people
the best
coming. You
response he
feel
could
it.
ever
You
make.
could
And it's
feel it
right.
too,
I
and
watched
you
that
could
clip with
feel it.
Pelosi.
And I said, they
It's probably
ought to
the
have
best
some
response he could have done.
National Guard or whatever. And I offered it to her. And she now admits that she turned it down. And it was the same day she was, I
I'm
don't know, she
curious to
can't be
see
very
Joe's
happy with her
response.
daughter because it made her into a liar. She said, I take
Well,
full
she was already a
responsibility
liar.
for January 6th.
She did. I saw the video.
President Biden?
Well, she didn't say January
Look,
6th.
he encouraged those folks to go up on Capitol Hill, number one. I sat in the dining room off the Oval Office. He sat there for 3 hours watching, begging, being begged by his vice president.
I
and a
believe
number
he
of his
debunked
colleagues
that,
on the Republican
actually.
side as well, to do something. To
On
call
a
for
CNN
stop,
town
to
hall,
end it.
ironically.
Instead, he talked about these people being patriots and great patrons of America. In fact, he says he'll now forgive them for what
Oh, yeah.
they've done. They've been convicted. He says he wants to commute their
Well, yeah, but some of
sentences
those people that have been
and
convicted
say
didn't do
that-
anything
no,
wrong. They were literally
he went
let
to
in. I
every
watched the
single
video.
court in the nation. I don't know how many cases. Scores.
Yeah,
of
because he
cases,
showed the
including
tweet,
Supreme
right?
Court.
The tweet with the
And they
time
said-
when he
they
debunked
said,
it.
No, this guy is responsible for doing what was done. He did do a damn thing, and these people should be in jail, and they should be the ones who are being held accountable. And he wants to let them all out. And now he says if he loses again, such a whiner that he is, that it could be a bloodbath.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump?
What they've done to some people that are so innocent, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. What you have done, how you've
Agreed.
destroyed the lives of so many people. When they ripped down Portland, when they ripped down many other cities, you go to Minnesota,
Perfect 10
Minneapolis,
response.
what they've done there with the fires all over the city. If I didn't bring in the National Guard, that city would have been destroyed. When you look at all of they took over big chunks of Seattle.
According
I
to
was all
Daily
set to
Wire,
bring in the
Biden's
National
performance has the left panicking. No! No buffering! You stop it!
National Guard. They heard that. They saw them coming in office. And Democrats, all Democrats, they destroyed and deleted all of the information they found because they found out we were right. We were right. And they deleted and destroyed all of the information. They should go to jail for that. If a Republican did that, they'd go to jail.
Thank you, President Trump. President Biden, I want to give you a minute.
Except Tucker
The
got
only
some
person
tapes.
on this stage is a convicted felon is the man I'm looking at right now. And the fact of the matter is, what he's telling you is simply not true. The fact is that
Yeah,
there
he's a
was
convicted
no effort
felon
on his part
from
to
a
stop what
Democratic
was going on
prosecutor
up in
to a
Capitol Hill.
Democratic
And all
activist
those
judge
people,
whose
every one of
daughter
those who were
literally
convicted
runs a
deserves to be
fundraising
convicted.
apparatus
The
for
idea that
Democrats
they didn't
in a
kill
district
somebody
that
just went in and
Biden
broke
won
down
handsomely,
doors,
which is
broke
why
the
they had
windows,
it there.
occupied offices, turned over desks, turn them over statues. The idea that those people are patriots, come on.
That's not who
When
he's
I asked
talking
him
about,
the first
Joe.
two debates we had, the debates we had first time around.
He's talking about the people who literally were told, yeah, you can come on in.
No, I'll tell them to stand by.
Tucker Carlson released the video.
Idea he's refusing to, will we
That's-
denounce these guys? We
He
denounce
did denounce them multiple times.
Denounce the
This is
people who
old
attacked
news.
that Capitol.
This is
What are you
old
gonna
fake
do?
news.
Okay, well, January 6th obviously doesn't apply to you, but when would you bring in the National Guard?
Well, let me comment on what they were saying. I don't know if President Trump obstructed the orderly transition of power, which is one of the keystones of American democracy. And
I mean, in a way they did, but it was ineffectual.
He should be punished for
It was
He should
ineffective.
be held accountable.
He's been
But
indicted
to
for
me,
that.
There's a larger issue, which is that
It's the
both
Georgia
these
case.
presidents swore to uphold the Constitution. They're both wearing American flag pins on their vests.
Where's
on their
yours?
lapels. That's easy to do. That's an accessory. That's an
Who was it
accoutrement.
that got? Who was it that got grief
uh,
years ago
it's
for
a-
not wearing the flag pin? Was that Obama?
It's a badge of patriotism. But real patriotism means protecting the United States Constitution. And when they
And by the way, everyone,
both of
also
them
brought to you by the
subverted the
Arte
right to free
podcast,
speech,
which
are the
in
most
July
important right.
we are planning to do an
President
episode where we
Biden,
talk to
37 hours
two
after he took the
Canadians
oath
of
of
different
office,
political
was ordering
persuasions
social media
and discuss
sites
American
to
politics
censor
from a
its political
Canadian
opponents. I'm
lens.
not just talking about me.
Like how Canada views the
And I'm not
U.S.
just talking
That's going to
about
be a really
COVID,
fun
but
discussion.
on all kinds of issues like Ukraine.
Don't have the
etc.
date
This
yet, but that
never
will be in
happened American
July.
history. He opened a portal. The FBI, the CIA, CISA, NIH, DHS, the IRS, and other agencies to go in and tamper with social media sites to take out things that were not politically palatable. They violated freedom of worship, the two of them, by shutting down every church in this country with no scientific citation. They violated freedom of assembly with mass regulations that, again, the top scientists.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe
Fauci
those were
admitted
state ordinances because
Congress
I
2
don't think
weeks
South
ago
Dakota
that they
ever
were not
closed,
scientifically
and
based.
Florida did close
shut
for a
down the
bit, but
Seventh
then
Amendment right to
fairly
jury
early
trials.
they were
They
like,
say you
"Nah, we're
couldn't
not
sue
doing
somebody who
this."
was involved in COVID countermeasures.
Now
No
that
matter
is
how
some
negligent
bullshit.
That corporation were the biggest
And Trump did
corporations
have a
in the
hand
world.
in that.
No matter how reckless their behavior, no matter how grievous your injury, you could not sue them. They shut down 3.3 million businesses with no due process and no just compensation in violation of the Fifth Amendment.
When my state
shut
passed
down
the
the
shutdown,
Fourth
I literally
Amendment,
said we were
prohibitions
considered
against
essential,
warrantless
but
searches and seizures with this track and trace surveillance.
yeah, when they
That
made the
was an
announcement,
all-out
it wasn't
assault on the
clear, and I
Constitution.
literally
We've
said,
never
I said,
seen
you
the
can either
likes of
pay
that
me or
any
you can
time
kiss
in
my
American
ass.
history.
Because if my business isn't
And
open, I don't
believe
make
they
money.
have the right to wear those American flag pins.
And if I don't make money, I can't eat.
That is
Them's fighting
Back to
words.
CNN.
I wouldn't go that far. I think Trump deserves to wear it.
After a jury convicted you of 34
I'm biased,
felonies
by the
last
way.
month, you said if reelected, you would, quote, have every right to go after, unquote, your political opponents. You just talked about members of the Select Committee on January 6th going to jail. Your main political opponent is standing on stage with you tonight. Can you clarify exactly what it means about you feeling you have every right to go after your political opponents?
Well, I said my retribution is going to be success. We're going to make this country successful again, because right now it's a failing nation. My retribution is going to be success. But when he talks about a
Not
convicted
entirely
felon, his son is
accurate,
a
but-
convicted felon at a very high level. His son is convicted, going to be convicted probably numerous other times. Should have been convicted before, but his Justice Department let the statute of limitations lapse on the most important things. But he could be a convicted felon as soon as
That's
he gets
true.
out
And
of
according
office.
to the
Joe could be a
IRS
convicted felon with
whistleblowers, there
all
was a
of
lot
the
of testimony
things that he's
talking about
done.
how
He's done horrible things.
one that
All
comes
of
to
the
mind is
death
Hunter
cause
got a
at
call
the
before
border,
they served a search warrant on a
telling
storage
the
unit.
Ukrainian people that we're going to want $1 billion or you change the prosecutor. Otherwise, you're not getting $1 billion. If I ever said that, that's quid pro quo.
And that's true. And
We're not going to do
Biden
anything.
bragged about
We're
doing
not going
that.
to give you $1 billion unless you change your prosecutor having to do with the son.
Oh, please
This man
lie
is a
about that,
criminal.
Joe.
This man, you're lucky. You're lucky.
And he was vice
I
president,
did
by
nothing
the way.
wrong. We'd have a system that was rigged and disgusting. I did nothing
Oh,
wrong.
I thought Biden
Thank
was
you,
going to
President
lunch at
Trump.
him.
President Biden, you have said, I'm coming right to you, sir. You want to respond? Go ahead. I'll give you a minute to respond.
The idea that I did anything wrong relative to what you're talking about is outrageous.
You
It's
bragged
simply a
about it
lie, number
on
one.
video.
Number two, The idea that you have a right to seek retribution against any American just because you're president is wrong. It's simply wrong. No president's ever spoken like that before. No president in our history.
That's not true. John Adams said.
Number three.
John Adams
crimes
said
you
many
are still
things.
charged with, and think of all the civil penalties you have. How many?
I think Jefferson too, and
for molesting a woman in public, for doing a whole range of things, of having sex with a porn star on the night while
that's
your
not
wife
what he was
pregnant.
indicted for.
I mean, what are you talking about? You have the morals of an alley cat.
Give you a minute, sir.
I didn't have sex with a porn star, number one.
Yes, you did.
Number two, that was a case that was started
That's a lie.
and moved. They moved a high-ranking official at
Yes, you
DOJ
did.
into the Manhattan
Come on.
DA's office to start that case.
Now
That
that
case
is
is going to be
accurate.
appealed and won. We had a very terrible judge, a horrible judge, Democrat.
That's true.
The prosecutor were all high-ranking Democrats, appointed people, and both the civil and the criminal. He basically went after his political opponent because he thought it was going to damage me. But when the public found out about these cases, because they understand it better than he does, he has no idea what these cases are. But when they found out about these cases, you know what they did? My poll
Nice.
numbers went up way up.
You're
You know
very,
that 'cause
very-
you're reporting it.
you're very
and
kind,
we took in
Caitlin.
more money in the last 2 weeks than we've ever taken in the history of any campaign. I don't think any campaign has
I
ever
think that's
taken.
true.
Hundreds of millions of dollars came pouring in.
They
because
crashed
the
2
public
sites,
knows
I
it's
believe.
a scam, and it's a guy that's after his political opponent because he can't win fair and square.
Thank you, President.
Again, the question doesn't really apply to you, but what do you think about the lawsuits?
Oh, that's
against
why
Donald
RFK
Trump?
wasn't.
Well, here's what I say. President Biden made the point that it's wrong for a federal official to use his federal governmental powers. It's an abuse of power to use that to punish or
Yeah,
disadvantage
Brandon.
his political opponents. But President Biden is doing that every day.
Yeah,
They've denied me Secret Service.
that's true. They denied him Secret Service.
But
That's
President
absolutely
Biden-
true,
I'm
and
the-
he's supposed
I'm
to
the
have it.
first candidate since my father was killed. When my father was killed, Secret Service became available to political candidates prior to the convention. 33 political candidates have been given that prior to the 100-day cutoff, 120-day cutoff.
I agree. He should have been allowed to be there.
And most of them with polling number a tiny fraction of what I
He
have.
should be in all the debates.
So President Biden, I am the first candidate since 1968.
The requirements are far too strict,
which has been
and it's
denied.
done
And
intentionally,
that is
though.
a way of using of weaponizing the federal agencies to punish a political opponent. I think President Trump was right. I'm not a fan of President Trump. I'm running against him. I think he was a bad president. But he's right that it's shocking.
Unless he picks you as VP, and then you'll be his best
CIA
friend.
agents signed this document saying that the Hunter Biden laptop was a Russian hoax. And they were accusing the Russians of tampering with our election. It was actually the CIA tampering with the election. I want to say this.
So, okay, guys, let's call it even. Let's say
President Biden is now deployed.
if the Hunter Biden
$3
laptop
billion
was a hoax, then
from
so is
big
the Stormy
corporations
Daniels
in this
case.
country. He's using that corporate money to sue me in virtually every state to keep me off the ballot. That's not democratic.
No, it is
We all,
not.
President Biden.
The only reason they kept him
A
off
couple
is
of
because they're
days ago,
scared of
Let me
him.
just finish this. President Biden was criticizing and ridiculing Vladimir Putin for getting 88% of the vote in Russia.
Kennedy, I'm
But
going to hold you to the time
let me
limit.
just finish this point. The way that Putin got 88% of the vote was by censoring his opponents on state-owned television, all the national TV networks, and by making sure they didn't get on the ballot. We should not be doing that here in this country. We should be an example of something better.
I should also add something we are doing that I don't think we should be doing. We said the rules would be the same for you as for them.
That's true. Stormy
my
has
ear to give
changed
you more
her
time, but I don't
account
think
of
that's right,
events
so
a
I'm
couple
gonna
of
stop
times.
doing that.
But
Back to CNN.
he totally did.
President Biden, you have said, quote, Donald Trump and his MAGA Republicans are determined to destroy American democracy.
Is
Do
Biden
you
looking at him
believe
like
that
he's
the
a
tens
fucking
of millions of
cheeseburger
Americans
and he
who are
hasn't eaten
likely
for
to
3
vote
days?
For President Trump will be voting against American democracy?
The more they know about what he's done, yes. The more they know about what he's done. and there's a lot more coming. He's got a lot of cases down the road coming around. He's got a whole range of issues he has to face. I don't know what the juries will do, but I do know he has a real problem. And so the fact that, could you ever think you heard any president say that I'm going to seek recognition?
Thank you.
Do you ever hear any president say that I thought Hitler had some good ideas?
Thanks for giving me the
What got me
W,
involved to
Seltzer.
run in the first place after my son had died, I decided in Iraq, because of Iraq, I said I wasn't going to run again until I saw what happened in Charlottesville, Virginia. People coming out of the woods carrying swastikas on torches, and singing the same anti-Semitic bile they sang when back in Germany. And the young woman got killed. They spoke to the mother.
I'm pretty sure
And
none of those
they
people
asked him,
spoke
they
German,
said,
but okay.
What do you think of those people? The ones that got killed, the one that tried to stop it.
This is old
and the
news,
ones he said,
Joe.
"I think
It's
they're
already been
fine
debunked."
People on both sides. What American president?
Yeah.
Would ever
Talk
say
about what happened
Nazis
next.
coming out of fields carrying torches, singing the same anti-Semitic bile, carrying swastikas. We're fine people.
Yes, you've
This
established
is a
that.
guy who says Hitler's done some good things. I'd like to know what they are. The good things Hitler's done, that's what he said. This guy has no sense of American democracy.
Yeah, this is all
President
news.
Trump.
It's another hoax.
Jake, both of you know that story has been totally wiped out because when you see the sentence, it said 100% exoneration on this. So he just keeps it going. He says he ran because of Charlottesville. He didn't run because of Charlottesville. He ran because it was his last chance. He's not equipped to be president. You know it, and I know it. It's ridiculous. We have a debate. We're trying to justify his presidency. His presidency, he's without question the worst president, the worst presidency in the history of our country. We shouldn't be having a debate about it. There's nothing to debate. He made up the Charlottesville story, and you'll see it's debunked all over
I don't know
the
that
place.
he made it up,
Every
but-
anchor has, every reasonable anchor has debunked it. And just the other day, it came out where it was fully debunked. It's a nonsense story. He knows that, and he didn't run because of Charlottesville. He used that as an excuse to run.
President Biden?
And debunked. It happened. All you have to do is listen to what was said at the time. And the idea that somehow that's the only reason I ran because I was worried a guy like this guy could get elected. If he thought they were good people coming out of that forest, carrying those woods, carrying those torches, then he didn't deserve to be president. Didn't deserve to be president at all. And the idea that he's talking about all this being fabricated, we saw with our own eyes. We saw what happened on January 6th. We saw the people breaking through the windows. We saw people occupying his own vice president. Look, there's a reason why 40 of his 44 top cabinet officers refused to endorse him this time. His vice president hasn't endorsed him this time. So why? Why? They know him well. They serve with him. Why are they not endorsing him?
I think a lot of them are, actually.
Again, there's
but
no
okay.
parallel question for you in there, but let me ask, of these two gentlemen, who would be worse as president?
I mean, I think
That's a
you-
really good
you
question,
put the
actually.
nail on that. You put the hammer on that nail perfectly. 70% of the American public say they don't want this contest because neither of them.
I don't think 70. Well, okay, I'll believe
Neither
that.
of them are running on the
But they're
things
still
that
going
are
to, the vast
absolutely
majority are going to vote for
critical
one or
to
the other.
Americans
I
right
believe
now.
that it's not ideal for
The
70%.
only thing they have, the only argument they have is be scared of that other guy. He's a felon. He's a bad guy. He's going to destroy the republic. They're running on fear. If Americans want to vote out of fear, they're going to vote for these guys. If they want to vote out of hope, they're going to vote out of me.
I'm going to grab
I
a
wanna
drink really
talk-
fast, but while you wait, check out all of the wonderful podcasts, and actually this isn't
I
even
want to
all
talk
of them,
about the fact
that you
that
can find on the
71%
RFK Podcast
of people in this
Pantheon.
country are making less than the cost of basic human needs. I want to talk about the fact that under their administrations, the top 1% of Americans now own more than the 60% that represent the American middle class. Our country has utterly changed because of them. I run into elderly people who are cutting their prescription pills in two to make it through the week. Mothers who are downgrading their purchases at the grocery store to make it out of the checkout line. A couple in New Hampshire who told me they're in their bedroom or in their living room with a crying baby, arguing with each other about whether that baby is $50 sick or $100 sick or $500 sick before they bring it to a hospital. These are kids who come up to me every day and say that one day a week, they have to choose between buying gasoline and buying lunch. These are choices you're not supposed to have to make in this country. And it's them, these two, who are not telling the American people how they're going to get our kids into homes. And that's what I want to talk about.
Back to CNN.
Welcome back to the CNN presidential debate live from Georgia. Let's talk about persistent challenges you both faced in your first terms and you'd certainly face again in a second term. President Biden, while black unemployment dropped to a record low under your presidency, black families still earn far less than white families. Black mothers are still 3 times more likely to die from pregnancy-related causes, and black Americans are imprisoned at 5 times the rate of white Americans. What do you say to black voters who are disappointed that you haven't made more progress?
They acknowledge they made a lot of progress, number one. The fact of the matter is there's more small black businesses that have been started than any time in history. Number two, the wages of black unemployment is the lowest level it's been in a long, long time. Number three, we're providing housing for black Americans and dealing with the segregation that exists among these corporations that collude to keep people out of their houses. And in addition to that, we find that the impact on the choice that black families have to make relative to child care is incredibly difficult. When we did the first major piece of legislation in the past, I was able to reduce black child care costs. I cut them in half.
So black people are the only ones that have trouble affording child care?
Costs. We got to make sure, because when you provide those child care protections, you increase economic growth because more people come in the job market. So there's more to be done, considerably more to be done. But we've done a great deal so far, and I'm not letting up, and they know it.
You have 49 seconds left. What do you say to black voters who are disappointed with the progress so far?
I say I don't blame them for being disappointed. Inflation is still hurting them badly. For example, I provided for the idea that any black family, first-time home buyer, should get a $10,000 tax credit to be able to buy their first home. So
really?
They can get started. I made
only
sure that we're in a
first-time black homeowners?
All those black
home
families
buyers?
and those black individuals who had to take out student loans that were ballooning, that if they were engaged...
Tell me you're a racist without saying you're racist.
Anything having to do with volunteerism. If they paid their bills for 10 years on their student debt, all the rest was forgiven after 10 years. Millions.
Right, I know. He literally just admitted that his inflation is hurting people.
Families.
Thank you, President Trump.
What about Hispanic families, Jewish families, Asian families?
And he's right, it's been very bad. He caused the inflation, and it's killing black families and Hispanic families and just about everybody. It's killing people. They can't buy groceries anymore. They can't. You look at the cost of food, where it's doubled and tripled and quadrupled. They can't live. They're not living anymore.
Don't shake your head, Joe.
He caused this inflation. I gave him a country with essentially no inflation. It was perfect. It was so good. All he had to do is leave it alone. He destroyed it with his Green New Scam and all of the other, all this money that's being thrown out
the Green New Deal didn't pass.
He caused inflation. As sure as you're sitting there, the fact is that his big kill on the black people is the millions of people that he's allowed to come in through the border. They're taking black jobs now, and it could be 18, it could be 19, and even 20 million people. They're taking black jobs, and they're taking Hispanic jobs, and you haven't seen it yet, but you're going to see something that's going to be the worst in our history.
Thank you. President Biden?
There was no inflation when I became president. You know why? The economy was flat on its back. 15% unemployment. He decimated the economy, absolutely decimated the economy.
COVID decimated the economy.
At the time. There were no jobs. We provided thousands of millions of jobs for individuals who are in all communities, including minority communities. We made sure that they have health insurance. We have covered, the ACA has increased. I made sure that they're $8,000 per person in a family to get written off for health care. But this guy wants to eliminate that.
Really? Because I tried to get insurance through the ACA, and it was hellaciously expensive, if not the same price.
We find ourselves in a position where the idea that we're not doing any, I put more We put more police on the street than any administration has. He wants to cut the cops.
You have no control over the police.
Equity and making
You
sure
have
people
zero
have a
control over the
shot
police.
to
That's
make it.
municipalities.
There's a lot going on.
And at the very least,
inflation,
at the state
he
level,
caused
you have
it
no
by
say
his
whatsoever in police
tremendous
presence.
You
lying fuck.
The way he handled the pandemic.
So trying to pass on a similar question.
Then explain,
I don't
yeah,
know
if
why
there's
they
so many
single out
police,
black
explain the
people, but
riots.
It's certainly true that some minorities in America do not do as well as us white people. And should government do something about that?
And I agree with the assessment that inflation is disproportionately hurting black people because they're wage earners. They've got
Inflation is disproportionately hurting
fixed income.
lower
Order
income
is
people.
Disproportionately hurting black and Hispanic workers. I hear that every single day. I spent
Lower
10 years
income
working with Cesar
workers.
Chavez during the last part of his life. He had two issues. One was pesticides, the disproportionate impact of pesticides on Hispanics. The other issue was the border, because he understood all of these illegal immigrants coming across the border were hurting the capacity of his workers, American workers, to get good jobs and wages. The issue that they didn't talk about, two issues. One is education. We spend $50 billion a year on the Department of Education, and black kids in this country, it's a crime what is happening to their schools. When I was a kid, we had the best educated kids by every
because
measure
you can't, in some
of any
places, you
country in the
can't
world.
decide where you go to school.
We're now 22. We're throwing billions of dollars.
So if you live in a shit district,
and in
you
inner
go to a
city
shit
schools,
school.
most of these
Not the
kids
case here, by the way.
cannot read or do math at grade level. It is a crime. We need to give them choice. We need to give them charter schools. Neither of them have done anything about it. The last issue, which both of them have aggravated, is the mass incarceration crisis. One out of every
we
four
are
black
streaming the
men
debate. They're not cutting it out.
has
And the
had
reason,
some
I'm just trying to be a little bit
contact with
different,
the correctional
honestly.
service.
And plus, I
And
figure if I stream this
60%
instead of the direct debate,
of the blacks in
I
American jails are
I think
there
it lowers
for
the risk of it
nonviolent
getting
drug
taken down.
offenses. Why? Because President
And plus, I do want to hear what
Biden
RFK has to say.
passed the Drug Act in 1986 that he wrote that gave 100 times the penalty for crack cocaine as powder cocaine. It was designed
Yeah,
to
2.9
put blacks
million
in jail. Then he
on
passed
watching
the
on X.
1994 omnibus crime bill with the super predatory provisions, the mandatory sentencing, the three strikes.
Oh no, you're good. You're good, Sosa. I was
Those
just
two
explaining
bills
why I'm doing what I'm
doubled
doing.
the amounts of blacks in American prison. The amounts of blacks in American prison were steady
Time
from
is
the
up,
Civil
Mr.
War till
Kennedy.
then.
Back to CNN.
Persistent challenge is the climate crisis.
No, it's not.
2023 was the hottest year in recorded history, and communities across the country are confronting the devastating effects of extreme heat, intensifying wildfires, stronger hurricanes, and
Forest
rising sea
management.
levels. Former President Trump, you've vowed to end your opponent's climate initiatives, but will you take any action
who is
as
saying
president
anything
to
about
slow
rising
the
sea
climate
levels?
crisis?
Well, let me just go back to what he said about the police, how close the police are to him. Almost every police group in the nation from every state is supporting Donald J. Trump. Almost every police group.
By the way, I
And
care
what he's
about
done to
I
the
care
black
about the environment
population is horrible,
and climate.
including the fact that for 10 years he called them super predators. We can't in the 1990s.
Yeah, I
we can't
know.
forget
They're
that.
talking about
Super
climate change.
predators was
I
his
did my
name,
part. I
and he
bought an
called it
electric
to them for 10
vehicle.
and they've taken great offense
Bought a
at it, and
Chevrolet
now
Volt,
they
which
see
has
it
a gas
happening.
generator, but
when they see what I did for criminal
even
justice
when it is
reform
running the
and
generator,
for
the emissions are
historically
ridiculously low.
black,
I qualify for the
colleges and
tax credit.
universities, where I funded them and got them all funded, and the opportunity zones with Tim, as you know, Tim Scott was incredible. He did a great job. Great senator from South Carolina. He came to me with the idea.
Yeah, I
It
know.
was a great
Climate change
idea.
is
It's
almost
one
a
of the most
buzzword
successful
now. I
economic
prefer
development acts
environment.
ever in the country. Opportunity zones, and the biggest beneficiary are blacks, and that's why we have the best numbers with them in maybe
Clean water,
ever.
clean
They're
air.
saying ever. I read this morning where ever the best numbers.
I'm all
He's
for it.
lost
And I'm all for
much of the black
other
population
energy sources too.
because
But if
he's
you
done
actually gave a
horrible
shit
job
about
for black people.
the climate
He's also done a horrible
and the
job
environment,
for
you'd invest in
Hispanics.
nuclear.
But wait till you see these millions of people pouring into our country, and they're going to take the jobs, and it's already started, and you haven't seen anything yet. It's a disaster.
Yeah, people say they don't want
38
nuclear in their
seconds left.
backyard.
President Trump, will you take any action as president to slow the climate crisis?
So I want absolutely
What the-
immaculate clean water, and I want absolutely clean air, and we had it. We had H2O. We had the best numbers
That was weird. They
ever,
went to a commercial
and we
on
were
accident.
using all forms of energy, all forms, everything. And yet, during my 4 years, I had the best environmental numbers ever. And my top environmental people gave me that statistic just before I walked on the stage.
I want to verify that, but I wouldn't actually be.
I don't know where the hell he's been. The idea.
I don't know where the hell
Maybe he
you've
said
been.
it's
You
true.
disappeared for a week
I
for
passed the
debate
most
prep.
most extensive climate change legislation in history. In history, we find ourselves. And by the way, black colleges. I came up with $15 billion for HBCUs, historic black universities and colleges, because they don't.
I thought we were talking about climate
they don't
change.
have the kind of contributors that they have to build these laboratories and the like. Any black student is capable in college of doing what any white student can do. They just have the money. But now they'll be able to get those jobs.
What was that
in
Biden
high-tech.
said?
In a situation where
Poor
the
kids
idea
had
that
just as
he
good and
is
capable as
claiming
white kids.
to have done something that had the cleanest water.
Oh, 3.1 million people
Cleanest water?
watching right now on
Not a
X,
damn
not
thing
here.
in the environment.
I wish.
He pulled out of the Paris Peace Accord, Climate Accord.
Yes, because it was
I
worthless.
immediately joined
We
it.
did a video on
Because
that.
if we reach 1.5
Which, by the way,
degrees
if you're
Celsius
interested
at any one point where there's no way
to
back,
plug the
only
Average Intelligence
existential threat to
podcast, we
humanity
did 2
is
episodes,
climate
one where
change.
we
If he
graded
didn't do a damn thing about
Donald
it,
Trump's
I'm not gonna do
presidency
all
and
that I've
Biden's
done.
presidency up to a certain point.
The Paris
I forget
Accord was
exactly
going to
where
cost
it
us
was,
$1 trillion,
but
and China nothing, and Russia nothing, and India nothing. It was a ripoff of the United States. And
yes, you're right.
I ended it
You're right,
because
Sosa.
I
Thank
didn't
you.
want to waste that
Poor
money
kids are
because they
just
treat us
as
horribly.
bright
We
and
were the only
talented
ones
as
who was
white
costing
kids.
us money. Nobody else was paying into it, and it was
Also,
it was a
apparently, if you
disaster.
vote for Donald
But
Trump, you
everything
ain't
that he
black.
said just now, I'll give you an example. I heard him say before insulin. I'm the one that got the insulin down for the seniors. I took care of the seniors. What he's doing is destroying all of our medical programs because the migrants coming in, they
Yes.
want everybody. And
Yeah,
look, I
Biden
have
repealed
I have
that
the
and then
biggest
did his
heart on
own
the
version of
stage,
the
I
same
guarantee
thing.
you that. And I want to take care of
I actually
people.
do believe
But
that.
we're
Remember,
destroying our
Trump went to
country.
East
They're taking
Palestine and
over our
brought
schools,
food
our
and water
hospitals,
with his
and they're
own
gonna be
money.
taking over
I don't
Social
believe
Security.
Biden's ever been
He
there
is
yet.
destroying Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid.
The idea is that we, in fact, we were the only ones of consequence who were not members of the Paris Accord. How can we do anything if we're not able to? The United States can't get its pollution under control. One of the largest polluters in the world, number one. We're making significant
No, we're
progress.
not.
By 2035,
I don't even think
we
we're in
will
the
have
top
cut
5.
pollution in half. We have made significant progress.
I'm going to look that up.
And we're continuing to make progress. We set up a climate corps for thousands of young people will learn how to deal with climate, just like the Peace Corps. And we're moving in directions that are going to significantly change the elements of cause of pollution. But the idea that he claims that he has the biggest heart up here and he's really concerned about pollution and about climate, I've not seen any indication of that. And by the way, with regard to prescription drugs, one company agreed that they would reduce the price to $35, which I was calling for, one, voluntarily. I made sure
Okay, so there's
every
2
company in
lists
the
I'm
world,
gonna
every
read.
pharmaceutical company
The
cannot have
first
to pay.
is
And by
the
the
first
way-
is the world's most polluted countries.
Oh,
Bangladesh
this
is
is
1,
frustrating.
Pakistan is 2, India is 3,
This is your
Tajikistan is 4,
specialty, but I
Burkina
object to
Faso is 5,
CNN's
Iraq
biased
is
question,
6,
would you take any
UAE
action
is
to slow
7,
the
Nepal
climate
is
crisis
8,
that is
Egypt
looming?
is 9, and
Climate change is a
Democratic
crisis,
Republic of the
so
Congo is
you think
10.
it
The
is,
United
and what would
States
you do?
I think
is
that climate change, first I want to say this. There's been nobody who's ever run for president of the United States and gotten anywhere. Well, let's say, I'll even say it more definitively, who has a strong environmental record and a larger commitment to the environment than I do. It's what I've been doing for 40 years. I believe climate change is existential, but I don't insist other people believe that. And I think I focus, and I've always focused on market-based solutions, which I think are the most efficient, eliminating subsidies for the energy industry, particularly carbon. We give carbon $5.2 trillion in subsidies a year, and creating a national grid system that is robust enough to do long-haul transportation of electrons. And we turn every American
USA
into an
is
energy entrepreneur,
number
every home into a power
102
plant
now.
with the cheapest, most efficient forms of energy. The market, we need to start by protecting habitat, our air, water, wetlands, soils, That's the most important thing you can do for climate. It's almost altogether ignored.
Okay, I don't
President
trust this list because the
Biden's
numbers don't make sense.
program, which is the Inflation Reduction Act, does a few good things, but the bulk of it is large subsidies to the oil industry, and to BlackRock and other really sinister corporations for carbon capture, which is a boondoggle. Carbon capture is a boondoggle. We should not be funding it. We should not be encouraging it. We shouldn't be encouraging any kind of geoengineering of that kind. We should be focusing on restoring our soils, doing regenerative agriculture, protecting our air, our water, our wildlife, stopping the carbon discharge from coal-burning power plants, which are causing $500 billion in respiratory injuries annually, poisoning every freshwater fish in our country with mercury.
Sorry, your time is up. Back to CNN.
So CNN says that the United States is number 2, but I'm looking at other lists that don't even have us in the top 10.
Social
So
Security provides a
I
critical
guess it depends
lifeline.
on what you're
President Biden, if
talking
nothing
about.
is done to Social Security, seniors will see their benefits cut in just over 10 years. Will you name tonight one specific step that you're willing to take to keep Social Security solvent?
Yes,
Raise
make
the retirement
very wealthy
age.
begin to pay their fair share. Right now,
How about you
everybody
stop
making under
stealing from it?
$170,000 pays 6%
That's to everybody.
of their income, of their paycheck, every single time they get a paycheck from the time of the first one they get when they're 18 years old. The idea that they're going to, I'm not going
What?
to even proposing that everybody, they pay.
That's not even
the
what?
Millionaires pay 1%. 1%. So no one I would not raise the cost of Social Security for anybody under $400,000.
Oh, Slasher, he actually has a condition. It's actually a lot better.
Increasing from 1%.
I remember on a
beyond
podcast he had said that
guarantee
the more he
program for life.
talks, the better it
So you
gets.
still have
I
82
can't remember
seconds
what
left. Are there
I
any
can't remember
other
what
measures
happened
that
to
you
him,
think
but
that
yeah,
would be able
unfortunately
to
he does
help,
have a
keep
condition
Social Security solvent,
that
or
makes his
is
voice sound
that
like
one
that. But it's
enough?
actually getting better.
That one enough will keep it solvent, but the biggest thing will do if we defeat this man, because he wants to get rid of Social Security.
At least
He
you said
thinks
if.
there's
He
plenty
does
to cut
not.
in
He
Social
never
Security.
said.
He's wanting to cut Social Security and Medicare.
He's
both
never
times.
said that.
And that's what. And if you look at the program put forward by the House Republican caucus that he, I believe, supports, is in fact want to cut it as well. The idea
I don't.
we
That
don't need
that
to
I don't.
protect
That's
our
not
seniors
accurate.
is ridiculous. And by the way,
If by cut you mean
American
raise the
public has
retirement
greater
age,
healthcare
yes, but
coverage
he's not
today
talking
than
about
ever
doing that
before.
tomorrow.
And on the ACA, as I said,
That would be like
you're in
people
a
my age.
circumstance where 400,000 people, 40 million people.
Yeah,
do
Slasher.
not
No,
have
I mean
insurance
even
because they
months
have a
before, like
pre-existing
before I
condition.
even really
Only
knew who he
allows them to
was.
have that
It
insurance
sounded
is
much,
the fact
much.
that they, in fact,
Like
are
I
part
thought
of
it was
the
painful for
ACA.
him to talk. Apparently,
And
it's
by the
not.
way,
It's
the
gotten a
other
lot
thing is,
better.
We're in a situation where we talk about education for black communities. I've raised the
He's talking about RFK's voice, by
amount
the
of
way.
money for Pell Grants, another $8,000.
Not sorry, I didn't mean to name drop you. But
$70,000 a year are going to be able to get $15,000 toward their tuition.
appreciate
he just
the
doesn't know what
live
he's
chat,
talking about.
guys. Keep it
Thank you,
coming. I
President
love
Biden.
it.
President Trump.
So I've dealt with politicians all my life. I've been on this side of
All
the
my life.
equation for the last 8 years. I've never seen anybody lie like this guy. He lies. I've never seen it. He can
Yeah, I
look
wonder
you in
what
the
the
face.
CNN numbers are. I'm sure.
so
I'm
many
sure
other
it's
things,
higher,
too.
but I don't
And
actually.
we
I'm gonna
mentioned
see
the
if I.
laptop. We mentioned Russia, Ukraine. Everything he does is a lie. It's misinformation and disinformation.
No, he's definitely starting to fade.
The
I mean, he started to
losers
fade
and
10
sucker
minutes
story that he
in, but
made up is a total lie on the military. It's a disgrace. But Social Security, he's destroying it because millions of people are pouring into our country, and they're putting them onto Social Security. They're putting them onto Medicare, Medicaid. They're putting them in our hospitals. They're taking the place of our citizens. What they're doing to the VA, to our veterans, is unbelievable. Our veterans are living in the street, and these people are living in luxury hotels. He doesn't know what he's doing, and it's really coming back. I've never seen such anger in our country before.
I don't know what you mean, Elite.
The
Can you
idea
clarify,
that veterans
please?
are not being taken care of. I told you before. And by the way, when I said suckers and losers,
Well, that's
said
part of the
he
reason why
acknowledged
we're
afterwards
watching
he
this one and
fired
not
that
just
general. That general
the
got fired
Biden and Trump.
because he's the one that acknowledged that that's what he said. He was the one standing with Trump when he said it. Number one. Number two.
Or maybe
the
he
idea
lied?
that we're going to be in a situation where all these millions and millions, the way he talks about it, illegal aliens are coming into the country and taking
Please
away
like
our
the video,
jobs.
everybody, and
There's a
subscribe if
reason
you
why
haven't.
We have the fastest growing economy in the
We're
world.
trying to grow
The
so we
reason
can
why
bring
we
you
have the
more
most
content
successful
like
economy in
this
the
and
world.
be a
We're doing better than
legitimate,
any other nation in the
independent
world. And by the way,
media
those
outlet.
15
And by the
Nobel
way, check
laureates, he
out
talked
all the
about
other
being phony.
podcasts on the
Those 15
on the
Nobel
Arte
laureates,
Podcast
economists, they all
Pantheon,
said that if Trump is reelected, we're likely to have a recession,
artemedia.org.
and
Link is in
inflation
the
is going to
description.
increasingly go up. And by the way, worst president in history, 159 presidential scholars voted him the worst president in the history of the United States.
Oh, no,
of
he's
America.
not even on the short list.
Again, a
Trump's not
very
even on the
important
short list for
question,
worst
Dodge.
president in
Social
history.
Security is going bankrupt. Taxing the rich more won't solve it.
Woodrow
What
Wilson,
would you
Jimmy
cut?
Carter.
Or what would you do?
Well, I agree with you. And Social Security is not an entitlement. Social Security is a contract.
James Buchanan.
Workers put 6% of their income into
John Adams. John Adams
into a
violated the First
fund,
Amendment,
and they're
second president of the
told
United
that
States.
At 65, they're going to get that money back. It's not an entitlement. It is contractual, and the government, the United States government, would be outrageous if the United States government did not live up to its full faith and credit of paying back those obligations, even if it has to reach outside of the Social Security system to get it. And what we
Yes,
need
he
to be
did just
doing
mess
is
up there.
winding down our military commitments. We need to unravel the war machine.
I think you can do that, wind down
need to
military commitments,
solve
but you
our
have to
chronic
do it
disease epidemic,
very,
which
very
is the biggest
intelligently and
cause, 4.3
strategically.
trillion.
I think there's probably a lot. I don't know this.
And we can do
I think there's
those
probably a
things
lot of
very quickly.
redundancy,
I'm going
though.
to cut the military budget in half during my first 4 years. I'm going to use AI and blockchain to eliminate waste in government to save more money.
That part I like.
And I'm going to get rid of the chronic disease epidemic. And ultimately,
That-
that's going to save us a lot of money. And this has to be a priority for us.
That's one of the biggest things that I agree with
I
RFK
also
on.
want to say
Hardcore.
this, that I was astonished by President Biden's claim that we have the best economy in the world. We
do, but
I
it could be
see
way
kids
better.
every day. None of this generation is going to get into a home.
That's not
gonna
true.
Destroy the American
Depends
middle
on where
class.
you
The
live.
American middle class, the greatest economic engine in the history of mankind.
While we're waiting for the video to buffer, all you horror fans, especially if you're a fan of the Goosebumps book series,
I was a kid. Our country owned half the wealth.
be sure to stick through to the end of the podcast, and you will see a promo for One Weekend at Horrorland, the Goosebumps convention being put on by the Goosebumps crew, also part of the Arte Podcast Pantheon. I promise I'm not doing this. This is Twitter.
The American
X.
families struggle to afford. President Trump, both you and President Biden have tried
Need
to
your help on the
address this issue,
Kickstarter to make
but
the event
average
happen.
cost of child care in this country has
The
risen to more than
military gets hundreds of
$11,000
trillions
a
of
year per
dollars in
child. For many
funding.
families,
Could definitely
the
use
cost
some
of child
cutting.
care for two
Yeah, I
children
just think
is
the
more
cuts have to
than
be
their
done
rent.
intelligently, and
In
I don't
your
know about
second
trillions.
term,
I'm not
what
sure
would
what the
you do to
budget
make
is. Certainly in the
childcare more
billions at the
affordable?
very least. Hundreds of
And
billions.
just to go back, the general got fired because he was no good. And if he said that, that's why he made it up. But we have 19 people that said I didn't say it, and they're very highly respected, much more so than him. The other thing is, he doesn't fire people. He never fired people. I've never seen him fire anybody. I did fire a lot. I fired Comey.
No,
'cause
I
he
think
was
some
no good.
people
I
were
fired a lot of the
fired, but
top
then he
people
hires
at the
crazier
FBI,
people.
Drained the swamp. They were no good. Not easy to fire people.
Because there
You
was
pay a
that,
price for it,
I
but
forget
they
his
were no good.
official
I
job, but the
inherited these
staff
people. I
member
didn't
that
put
got
them there.
caught
I didn't put
stealing
Comey
women's
there.
underwear.
He was no good. I fired him.
And it was a
This
guy.
guy hasn't
It was a
fired
man.
anybody. He never fires. He should have fired every military man that was involved with the Afghanistan horror show, the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. He didn't fire. Did you fire anybody? Did you fire anybody that's on the border that's allowed us to have the worst border in the history of the world? Did anybody get fired for allowing 18 million people, many from prisons, many from mental institutions? Did you fire anybody that
I would be
allowed our
pointing out
country
more
to
of the
be
terrorists
destroyed?
and
Joe,
cartels
our country
personally.
is
but-
being destroyed as you and I sit up here and waste a lot of time on this debate. This shouldn't be a debate. He is the worst president. He just said about me because I said it. But look, he's the worst president in the history of our country. He's destroyed our country. Now all of a sudden he's trying to get
I like
a
the
little tough
wasting
on the
time
border.
comment.
Came out with a nothing.
'Cause it's true, this
nothing
basically
deal,
is a
and it
waste of
reduced
time.
it a little bit. a little bit like this.
Biden
much.
wasted
It's
a week preparing for this
insignificant.
debate, by the
He
way.
wants open borders. He wants our country
Spent a
to
whole
either
week at
be
Camp
destroyed
David.
or he wants to pick up those people as
So I
voters.
read.
And I don't think we just can't let it happen. If he wins this election, our country doesn't have a chance, not even a chance, of coming out of this rut. We probably won't have a country left anymore. That's how bad it is. He is the worst in history by far.
Thank you, President Trump. President Biden?
We're the most admired country in the world. We're the United States of America. There's nothing beyond our capacity. We have the finest military in the history of the world, the finest in the history of the world.
No
No
thanks
one
to
thinks
you.
we're weak. No one wants to screw around with us. Nobody.
That's
Number
not
one.
true.
Number two, the idea that we're talking about worst presidents. I wasn't joking. Look it up. Go online. 159 or 58, don't hold me the exact number, presidential historians, they've had meetings and they voted who's the worst president in American history, one through best to worst. They said he was the worst in all of American history.
Gee, I wonder
That's a
what
fact.
political
That's not
affiliation they
that's not
have.
conjecture. He can argue they're wrong, but that's what they voted. The idea that he is doing anything to deal with child care, he did for virtually nothing to child care. We should significantly increase the child care tax credit. We should significantly increase the availability.
Oh my God, he fucking did during
COVID. To be
COVID.
able to go back to work. And
He
we should
did that.
encourage
He's gonna
businesses
tell him that he did
to
that.
have
Thank you, President
child care
Biden.
facilities.
President Trump, the question was about what would you do to make child care more affordable, if you want to take your minute.
Just so you understand, we have polling, we have other things that they rate him the worst because what he's done is so bad. And they rate me, I'll show you, I will show you. And they rate me one of the best, okay? And if I'm given
To be fair,
another
that
4
depends on who
years,
you
I will be
ask.
the best. I think I'll be the
But
best.
I think objectively,
Nobody's ever created an economy like us. Nobody ever cut taxes like us. He's the only one I know. He wants to raise your taxes by 4 times. He wants to raise everybody's taxes by 4 times. He wants the Trump tax cuts
4
to
times might be
expire.
happy. Oh,
So
well, okay,
everybody,
in
including
that,
the two
yeah.
of you are going to pay 4 to 5 times. Nobody ever heard of this before. All my life, I'd grow up and I'd see politicians talking about cutting taxes. When we cut taxes, as I said, we did more business. Apple and all these companies, they were bringing money back into our country. The worst president in history by far, and everybody knows it.
President Biden?
Certainly
Look,
modern
the fact of the matter
history.
is that he's dead wrong about. He's increased the tariff. He will increase the taxes on middle class people. I said
No,
I never
he did-
raised the tax on anybody.
Not
making
not not
less
across the
than
board. I'm sure
$400,000.
somewhere.
I didn't. But this tariff is 10% tariffs. Everything coming into the country. You know what the economists say?
Yeah,
That's gonna
I
cost the
think 4 to
average
5
American
times.
$2,500
That seems a
year
little
more because they're going to have to pay the difference.
That's not
in
true across the
food
board.
and all the things that were important. Number two, he's in a situation where he talks about how he has not raised, he's somehow helped the middle class. Middle class have been devastated by you. Now you want a new tax cut of $5 trillion
not
over
fucking
the next
true.
10 years, which is going to fundamentally bankrupt the country. You had the largest
No, it
deficit
won't.
of any president in American history.
No,
Number
you
one.
did.
Number two, you have not, in fact, made any
And probably not when you adjust for
any
inflation.
progress with China. We are the
That's
lowest
bullshit.
trade deficit with China since 2010.
No, that's
Thank you, President
bullshit.
Back to their original question. CNN.
I
has somehow
commented
found
on
childcare
this. I'm in an
crisis
industry that used to
America.
import
Somehow
a lot of the
Americans raised
products,
children for
pretty much all
years.
the products
Now
from
there's a
China.
crisis because
After
it costs so
the
much.
Trump tariffs came into
That's
effect, I was the
something
only person that
government
wasn't
did
freaking
or
out. I said
can
it was going to
fix.
suck for 6 months, but
Oh,
then the
the
net
reason there's a
benefit was going to
crisis
outweigh the bad, and it did.
is because the
Manufacturing moved to
economy
different
with the
countries,
middle
including
class is
Mexico.
gone.
The
So in
products were
order to
better.
pay for a
Quality
home,
control was
you need
better.
2 jobs or
Prices
3
went up a
jobs.
bit, but that was
So
really more due to
oftentimes, I'm running into
infrastructure.
people who have 4 jobs
And
between
some
the
of them
couples.
have come down, by the way.
It used to be when you and I were growing up, mom stayed at home.
So no, Trump did.
Or a parent stayed at home.
Trump made a
and
lot
took
of
care the
progress with
kids.
China.
That doesn't happen anymore. Now, both parents, in order to hold on to that home, need to be working. So we do have a child care crisis in this country. And it's because of the destruction that both these men contributed to of the American middle class. And neither of them is offering any way to restore the middle class. Child care for black Americans, John, is 37% of income, a single child. Oh, and nobody can afford that. And
No.
what
yeah.
I'm going to do I'm going to wind down. I'm going to balance.
Is that
out my-
37% of a single
President Trump
person's
promised
income
to
or
do, but
household?
I'm actually going to do it because why?
wonder.
Because it's existential. If we don't have the courage to do that, no
Which
matter
some
what the
households
cuts
are one person. That's why I want to
we
know,
have
though.
to do that, or we are going to cease to exist as an influential nation. And I'm going to, but we cannot cut our way out of this debt. We have to build new industry. We have to build GDP. And one of the most efficient ways of building GDP is through childcare, through guaranteed childcare. There's a 22%.
No, technology
22
is
times return on investment. As I said,
4.2 million
every
people are
$1 million
watching
we spend on
on
military
X.
weapons creates 2 jobs. Every $1 million.
Oh, I see what
we
you're
spend
saying.
on
It creates
childcare
jobs.
creates
I
22
gotcha.
jobs.
I gotcha.
And we need to grow our way
Sorry, I
out of this
misunderstood.
budget death spiral. And one of the ways we're going to do that is by providing child care, by taking away $500 billion from the military.
Back to the CNN debate.
Let's discuss an epidemic impacting millions of Americans that both of you have made a top priority in your first term, the opioid crisis. And for both of you, the number of overdose deaths in this country has gone up. Under your term, it went up. Under your term, it has gone up. Former President Trump, despite the efforts that both of you have made, more than 100,000 Americans are dying from overdoses every year, primarily from fentanyl and other opioids. What will you do to help Americans right now in the throes of addiction?
That's probably because of
to get the
fentanyl.
treatment they need.
If I had to
finish
guess.
up, we now have the largest deficit in the history of our country under this guy. We have the largest deficit with China. He gets paid by China. He's a Manchurian candidate. He gets money from China.
That's not what that means.
Or something. But
well,
he never took out my tariffs because we bring in so much money with the tariffs that I imposed on China. He never took them away. He can't because it's too much money. It's tremendous. And we saved our
Can't
steel
tell if he's being
industries,
literal
and
or
there was
not.
more to come, but he hasn't done that. But he hasn't cut the tariffs because he can't, because it's too much money. But he's got the largest deficit in the history of our country, and he's got the worst situation.
Okay, appropriate, but I
China.
think Trump was
China's
going
gonna
literal
own
with
us if
that,
you
but I'll
keep
give him the
allowing
benefit of
them
the doubt.
to do what they're doing to us as a country. They are killing us as a country, Joe, and you can't let that happen. You're destroying our country.
So, President Trump, you have 67 seconds left. The question was, what are you going to do to help Americans in the throes of addiction right now who are struggling to get the treatment they need?
Jake, we were doing very well at addiction until the COVID came along. We had the 2.5, almost 3 years of like nobody's ever had before, any country, in every way. And then we had to get tough. And it was the drugs pouring across the border it started to increase. We got great equipment. We bought the certain dog that's the most incredible thing that you've ever
Beautiful
seen. The way they can
dogs.
spot it. We did a lot, and we were getting very low numbers, very, very low numbers.
By the
Then
way, if
he
you
came
haven't
along,
seen the
numbers, have
Shane
you
Gillis
seen the
stand-up,
numbers
Beautiful
now?
Dogs, oh
It's
my
not
God.
only the 18 million
After this,
people
go
that
on
I believe
Netflix
is
and
even
watch it,
low because
'cause
the
it's
gotaways, they don't
so
even talk
funny.
about gotaways. But the
Beautiful
numbers
dogs.
of the amount of drugs and human trafficking in women coming across our border, the worst thing I've ever seen, at numbers that nobody's ever seen under him because the border's so bad. But the number of drugs coming across our border now is the largest we've ever had by far.
President
I'd
Trump,
be
thank you,
interested to
President
see
Biden.
that, Elite.
Fentanyl and the
Can
bipartisan
you share a
fentanyl
link
went down for a while.
in the live chat? I'm not
And
sure.
I wanted to make sure
I would like
we
to
use
see
the
that.
machinery that can detect fentanyl. These big machines.
RFK's got something to say.
And it costs a lot of money. That was part of this deal we put together, this bipartisan deal. More fentanyl machines, more be able to detect drugs, more numbers of agents, more numbers of all the people at the border.
Yeah,
And
but the
when we
agents
had that
can't
deal
do
done,
anything if they
he went and
encounter
called
anybody.
his
They're supposed to release them into the
Republican colleagues and said,
interior,
"Don't
take
do
them to
it.
a fucking
It's gonna
bus.
hurt me politically." No, he never argued it's not a good bill. It's a really good bill. We need those
No,
machines.
it's not. It was a bullshit
we
bill.
need those machines.
I read
They're
it.
coming down very hard in every country in Asia.
You're
in
leaving
terms
out
of
the
precursors for
ridiculous
fentanyl,
standards for
and
closing the
Mexico is
border,
working
by
with
the
us to
way,
make sure
that
they
were
don't
in
have
that
the
bill.
technology to be able to put it together. That's what we have to do. We need those machines.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump, and again, the question is about Americans in the throes of addiction right now struggling to get the treatment they need.
Well, this does pertain to it. He ended Remain in Mexico. He ended catch and release. I made it catch and release in Mexico, not catch and release here. We had so many things that we had done, hard negotiations with Mexico, and I got it all for nothing. It's just like when you have a hostage. We always pay $6 billion for a hostage. Every time we say it's a hostage.
That
Now
or we
have a
trade an
hostage,
arms
the Wall
dealer.
Street Journal reporter, I think a good guy, and he's over there because Putin is laughing at this guy, probably asking for billions of dollars for the reporter. I will have him out very quickly as soon as I take office. Before I take office, I said by literally as soon as I win the election, I will have that reporter out. He should have had him out a long time ago. But Putin's probably asking for billions and billions of dollars because this guy pays it every time.
Rubles.
We had 2 cases where we paid $6 billion for 5 people. I got 58 people out, and I paid essentially nothing.
I like it when they cut them off on CNN.
Yeah, I know. I'm kind of a fan.
We do have a big opioid problem, people in crisis, people overdosing, but also people in pain who can't get pain relief because doctors are afraid of the DEA. What would you do?
Both of these presidents miss the point. They're talking about drug interdiction at the border. That's not the problem. In fact,
that's true. If there's not clients, then they wouldn't be funneling it over.
Fentanyl occupies such a tiny volume, about 1/200th of other opioids. You could bring enough fentanyl across the border in a briefcase to kill everybody in Los Angeles. So the fentanyl is going to come in this country. The problem is something much larger than that. It's a generation that is alienated.
Wasn't trying to get you to drop anything like that. I would be interested in seeing that information.
And that's why they're turning to drugs. And we need to deal with that.
Yeah, obviously, you've no need to share
by,
it there. I would just be interested in seeing it.
My signature policy
Thank you,
is to begin taxing marijuana federally, to deschedule it from Schedule 1, where it is now, where the federal government is not allowed to tax it. So marijuana is legal in many states, but the federal government cannot collect taxes on it. It's legal. It's not going to, whether you can tax it or not, is not going to affect the number of people who are using it or amount that's used. We're going to deschedule it so the government can start collecting taxes. That will raise $8.5 billion in revenue.
Probably more than that.
Money to building drug rehabilitation farms, wellness farms, restoration farms. In rural areas all over this country where any American can go for free to deal with depression, suicidal behavior, alcoholism, drug addiction to illegal drugs, but also addiction to SSRIs, to benzos, to Adderall. We need to reclaim our children. We have a whole generation that's growing up with social media, that's growing up with no hope for their future. They can't get into homes. They can't get meaningful jobs.
2 minutes, Mr. Kennedy.
I wouldn't be opposed to that.
Let's turn to concerns that voters have.
As long as they
about
actually
each of
treated
you.
people's addictions.
President Biden, you would be 86 at the end of your second term. How do you address concerns about your capability to handle the toughest job in the world well into your 80s?
Well, first of all, I spent half my career being criticized being the youngest person in politics. I was the second youngest person ever elected to the United States Senate, and now I'm the oldest. This guy's 3 years younger and a lot less competent. I think that just look at the record. Look at what I've done. Look how I've turned around the horrible situation he left me. As I said, 15 million new jobs, 800,000 manufacturing jobs.
Again, that's
more
been
investment in America.
Even CNN debunked your shit,
billions
dude.
of dollars in private investment in enterprises that we are growing.
No, that's promised. We talked about that during your State of the Union. That's not actual funds.
Computer chips.
That's
we used to have
pledges.
3% of the market. We invented those chips, and we lost it because he was sending people to find the cheapest jobs overseas and then bring home a product.
Trump didn't do that.
I went to South Korea. I convinced Samsung to invest billions of dollars here in the United States. And guess what? Those fabs, they call that to build these chips, those fabs pay over $100,000. You don't need a
that got
college degree for
debunked.
them.
That was
And there's
debunked.
billions.
The vast majority of those jobs require a college degree at that pay
In the
rate.
United States, creating significant
That was
jobs
debunked
for
during your State of the
Americans all
Union
over
this year.
All over the world.
President Biden, you have 40 seconds left. Would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I would. The idea that somehow
Shiver never know national pressure.
this failing country. I never heard a president talk like this before. We're
Except
the envy
you
of the world.
when you were
Name
running.
me a single major country president who wouldn't trade places with the United States of America for all our problems and all our opportunities. We're the most progressive country in the world in getting things done. We're the strongest country in the world. We're a country in the world who keeps our word, and everybody trusts us. All of our allies
Not under you.
Those who he cuddles up to from.
Oh,
Kim
wow,
Jong-un,
okay.
He sends love letters
Hello to
and
all the new
Putin, et
people
cetera. They don't want to screw around with
that
us.
are joining us on the
Thank
stream.
you.
Throw
Former
some
President
comments in
Trump,
the
to
live
follow
chat
up,
if you'd
you
be
would
so
be
kind. Please
82
like the
at
video
end
and
of your
subscribe if you
second
have
term.
not.
What do you say to voters who have concerns about your capabilities to
And
serve?
obviously, if you missed the live stream, it'll be available to
I
watch.
aced them, both of them, as you know. We made it public. He took none. I'd like to see him take one, just one. A real
I'd
easy
like to
one.
see him take
like
one.
go through the first 5 questions. He couldn't do it. But I took 2 cognitive tests. I took physical exams every year. And, you know, we knock on wood wherever we may have wood, that I'm in very good health. I just won 2 club championships, not even senior. 2 regular club championships. To do that, you have to be quite smart, and you have to be able to hit the ball a long way. And I do it. He doesn't do it. He can't hit a ball 50 yards. He challenged me to a golf match. He can't hit a
Did
ball
he just
50
say you had to be
yards.
smart to play golf?
I think I'm in very good shape. I feel that I'm as in good a shape as I was 25, 30 years ago. Actually, I'm
Oh,
probably
that's
a little bit
horseshit,
lighter.
dude.
But I'm in as good a shape as I was years ago.
Then you must have
I
been
feel
in
very good. I
really
feel the
shitty
same.
shape
But
30
I
years
I
ago.
was willing to take a cognitive test. And you know what? If I didn't do well, I aced
RFK is
him.
by far the best in the
Dr.
best
Ronnie
shape,
Jackson, who's
physically
a great
speaking.
guy when he was White House
of the
doctor.
3.
And then I took another one, a similar one. And one of them said they've never seen anybody ace him.
Thank you. President Biden?
You can see he is 6'5" and only 223 pounds, or 235 pounds. Well, he said 6'4", 200. Well, anyway, that's what you're. Anyway, just take a look at what he says he is, and take a look at
Wrong.
what he is. Look, I'd be happy to have a driving contest with him. I got my handicap, which when I was vice
You
president.
said a game of
down to
golf,
a
not
6.
a driving contest.
But
What?
by the
Are we
way,
seriously
I told
fucking
him,
talking
I'm
about
happy to
golf
play
right now?
If you carry your own bag.
What the fuck?
Think you can do it?
Seriously, this is.
That's the biggest lie that he's a 6 handicap of all.
I was
Why are
an
we
8
talking about
handicap,
golf?
8.
Stop talking
Well,
about
I-
golf.
I've seen you swing. I know you swing.
Okay, let's
you know,
not act
nobody
like
rounds
children.
President Trump, we're going to
21
turn.
Let's not act.
Merciful when they cut them off now.
Oh yeah, dude. No, RFK is by far in the best shape of the 3.
All I'm going to say is I hope they let me on the stage for that contest.
What do you do to stay healthy?
What?
What do you do to stay healthy?
What do I?
What do you do to stay healthy?
What do I do? Well, I hike every day. I go to the gym every day. I don't ever eat processed food. And I do intermittent fasting, and I try to eat
Oh yeah,
well,
4.8
so
million.
I feel like I really want to be part of that contest.
By the way, those of you who just joined us, be sure to stay tuned at the end after the debate where you will see a promotional video for our horror convention that our company is putting on.
Big
And
concern that voters have about you. Will
we're
you pledge
co-producing
tonight
it with the Goosebumps
that
Crew
once all
podcast, so
legal
stay tuned for
challenges
that.
have been exhausted, that you
And learn
will
how you can
accept
pledge to the
results of
Kickstarter
this
and get your
election,
tickets
regardless of who
pre-ordered or
wins,
virtual access
and
if you can't
you
make
will
it to
say
the
right
event.
now that political violence in any form is unacceptable.
Well, I shouldn't have to say that, but of course I believe that. It's totally unacceptable. And if you would see my
that'll get
statements that I made
misquoted
on
soon.
Twitter at the time, and also my statement that I made in the Rose Garden, you would say it's one of the strongest statements you've ever seen. In addition to the speech I made in front of, I believe, the largest crowd I've ever spoken to, and I will tell you, nobody ever talks about that. They talk about a relatively small number of people that went to the Capitol, and in many cases were ushered in by the police. And as Nancy Pelosi said, it was her responsibility, not mine. She said that loud and
There's
clear.
video for all that.
But the answer is, if the election is fair, free, and I want that more than anybody. And I'll tell you something. I wish he was a great president, because I wouldn't be here right now. I'd be
Yes,
at
you
one
would.
of my many places enjoying myself. I wouldn't be under indictment
You like
because
to
I
win.
wouldn't have been his political opponent. because he indicted me because I was his opponent. I wish he was a great president. I would rather have that. I wouldn't be here. I don't mind being
It's a
here.
good line,
the
though.
only reason I'm here is he's so bad as a president that I'm going to make America great again. We're going to make America great again.
Yeah, he would totally be there. Trump likes winning too much.
We're a seriously failing nation. And we're a failing nation because of him. His policies are so bad. His military policies are insane. They're insane. These are wars that will never end with him. He will drive us into World War III, and we're closer to World War III than anybody can imagine. We are very, very close to World War III.
Unfortunately.
And he's driving us there. And Kim Jong-un and President Xi of China, Kim Jong-un of North Korea, all of these, Putin, they don't respect him.
Did he just clarify that so to make fun of Biden mixing up world leaders? I feel like that's why he did it.
And he's going to drive us into World War III.
By the way, Kim Jong-un just pledged troops to support the war in Ukraine on Russia's side.
And let Putin say, do what you want, NATO.
That was debunked, Joe.
There's a thing called Article 5. An attack on one is an attack on all and required response. The idea, I can't think of a single major leader in the world who wouldn't trade places with the job I've done and what they've done. Because we are a powerful nation. We have wonderful people. It's because of the people, not me. It's because of the American people. They're capable of anything, and they step up when
So
they're
you
needed.
can go?
And right now, we're needed. We're needed to protect the world because our own safety is at stake. And again, you want to have a war, just let Putin go ahead and take Kyiv, make sure they move on, see what happens in Poland, Hungary, and other places along that border. Then you have a war.
President
You already
Trump,
have a
as I
war.
come back to you for a follow-up, the question was, will you accept the results of this election, regardless of who wins?
Just to finish what he said, if I might, Russia, they took a lot of land from Bush. They took a lot of land from Obama and Biden. They took no land, nothing from Trump, nothing. He knew not to do it. He's not going to play games with me.
That's
he knew
an
that.
accurate
I got along
statement.
with him very well, but he knew not to play games. He took nothing from me. But now he's going to take the whole thing from this man right here. That's a war that should have never started. It would have never started ever with me. And he's going to take Ukraine.
I believe that.
And, you know, you asked me a question before, would you do this? He's got
Now
us
he's
in
going to
such
be
a bad
misquoted
position
saying
right now
that
with
he's
Ukraine and
anti-Ukraine.
Russia. Because Ukraine's not winning that war. He said, I will never settle until such time. They're running out of people. They're running out of soldiers. They've lost so many people. It's so sad. They've lost so many people, and they've lost those gorgeous cities with the golden domes that are 1,000 years old, all because of him and stupid decisions. Russia would have never attacked.
That's a
President Trump,
soundbite.
the question was, will you accept the results of the election, regardless of who wins? Yes or no, please.
If it's a fair and legal and good election, absolutely. I
Good
would
answer.
have much rather accepted these, but the fraud and everything else was ridiculous. And if you want, we'll have a news conference on it in a week, or we'll have another one of these in a week. But I will absolutely, there's nothing I'd rather do.
Good
It would
answer.
be much easier for me to do that than I'm running again. I wasn't really going to run until I saw the horrible job he did.
That's
He's destroying our
horseshit.
country. I would
You've
be
been
very happy
campaigning
to be
since-
someplace else, in a nice location someplace. And again,
That's a lie.
no indictments, no political opponent stuff. Because
And I'm
it's
not
the
hating
only
on
way
you
he
for
thinks
it.
he
Just
can
tell the
win.
truth.
But unfortunately, it's driven up my numbers and driven them up to a very high level because the people understand it.
Well, let's see what your numbers are when this election is over.
Yes, we will.
Let's see. You're a whiner. When you lost the first time, you continued. You appealed and appealed to courts all across the country.
barely lost,
Not
though,
one
dude.
single court in America said any of your claims had any merit.
And
State
isn't that
or local.
strange that not
None.
a single
But
one
you continue to provoke
didn't even take it
this
up?
lie about somehow there's all this misrepresentation, all this stealing. There is no evidence of that at all. And I tell you what, I doubt whether you'll accept it because you're such a whiner. The idea, if you lose again, you accepting anything, you can't stand the loss. Something snapped in you when you lost the last time.
And that's it for the CNN debate. This is your forum. You get the final word. But just one observation.
So that was
has been
apparently the
listening
end
to
of the
them.
CNN debate.
America is in terrible decline. But I don't see people risking their lives to leave America or to go to many other countries. They want to come here. And you say the middle class is disappearing. It's true, it's getting smaller, but the data
divide
show
is
mostly
growing.
because they're going into the upper class. I think America is doing pretty well, and we just need you
Lady in the
politicians to
audience
leave
is
us
super
alone.
surprised by that statement.
I just
Did you see her?
Make
She
an
went,
observation about President Trump's final point, which I think is a very, very important point for Americans to understand. We are closer to nuclear war right now than at any time since 1962.
It's legitimately
this week
scary.
We did something extraordinary that was hardly covered by the press, which is we fired a missile in coordination with Ukraine into a series of missiles into Crimea with cluster bombs, which every nation in the world except for us and North Korea says is a war crime. We dropped them on a civilian population, people who were sitting on sunning themselves on a beach, and we killed a lot of children. And the previous week, the Russians are in Cuba firing missiles because they've warned us. We are going to lose the war in Ukraine. I've said that from the beginning. We cannot beat Russia and the Ukraine. They cannot allow themselves to lose that war. They've been invaded 3 times through Ukraine. The last time they were invaded, the Russians killed, Hitler killed 1 out of every 7 Russians. They're not going to let us put NATO in Ukraine. They cannot do it. It's absolutely critical for their national security, and we need
and
to
if you know
recognize
your
that.
history of Russia, you understand why it's not just World War II.
With a nuclear power that
Like you
says
said,
they
3
will
times.
use a nuclear weapon if they're pushed to the edge.
Including Napoleon.
They have 2,500 more nuclear weapons than we do. They have better defensive weapons, and we cannot fight a world war anymore. Because of hypersonic missiles, we couldn't get 1 million men across the Atlantic. Even worse, we do not have an industrial base like we did before World War II. We can't create weapons anymore. You create small numbers, but nothing like the Chinese or the Russians. This is something that every American needs to understand how close the incompetence of this administration has brought us to war.
Closing
I'll shut up,
statements now.
but let me.
We have closing statements from.
Can I say a closing
You'll get your closing statement right after they get theirs.
Oh, I apologize. There are closing statements.
It is now
He said
time
the
for
end.
the candidates to deliver their closing statements as predetermined by a coin toss. We're going to begin with you, President Biden. You have 2 minutes.
We've made significant progress from the
God, he
debacle
sounds
that was
older.
left by President Trump in his last term. We find ourselves in a situation where, number one, we have to make sure that we have a fair tax system. I ask anyone out there in the audience or anyone out watching this debate, do you think the tax system is fair? The fact is that I said nobody even making under $400,000 had a single penny increase in their taxes, and will not. And if I'm reelected, that'll be the case again. But this guy has increased your taxes because of the deficit. Number one, he's increased inflation because of the debacle he left after the way he handled the pandemic.
You more so.
And he finds himself in a position where he now wants to tax you more by putting a 10% tariff on everything that comes into the United States of America. What I did, when, for example, he wants to get rid of the ability of Medicare for us to be able to negotiate drug prices with the big pharma companies. Well, guess what? We got it down to $35 for insulin instead of $400.
He did that
more
first.
than $2,000 for every senior, no matter how much prescription they need. You know what that did? That reduced the federal deficit by $160 billion over 10 years because the government doesn't have to pay the exorbitant prices. I'm going to make that available to every senior all along, it's happening now, and everybody in America. He wants to get rid of that. I'm going to make sure that we have child care.
Yeah, I'll believe that shit when I see
increase
it.
the credit people have for child care.
Trump did that.
Make sure we do something about what we're doing on lead pipes and all the things that are causing health problems for people across the country. We're going to continue to fight to bring down inflation and give people a break.
I believe Flint happened under the
President Biden.
Obama
President Trump,
administration.
you now have 2 minutes for your closing statement.
Just
like
saying.
so many politicians, this man is just a complainer. He said, we want to do this, we want to do that.
He's
we
a
want to get rid of
whiner.
this tax, that tax. But he doesn't do anything. He doesn't do, all he does is make our country unsafe by allowing millions and millions of people to pour in. Our military doesn't respect him. We look like fools in Afghanistan. We didn't stop Israel. It was such a horrible thing that would have never happened. It should have never happened. Iran was broke. Anybody that did business with Iran, including China, they couldn't do business with the United States. They all passed. Iran was broke. They had no money for Hamas or Hezbollah, for terror, no money whatsoever. Again, Ukraine should have never happened. He talks about all this stuff, but he didn't do it. For 3.5 years, we're living in hell. We have the Palestinians and we have everybody else rioting all over the place. You talk about Charlottesville. This is 100 times Charlottesville, 1,000 times. The whole country is exploding because of you, because they don't respect you, and they have to respect their president, and they don't respect you throughout the world. What we did was incredible. We rebuilt the military. We got the largest tax cut in history, the largest regulation cut in history. The reason he's got jobs is because I cut the regulations that gave jobs, but he's putting a lot of those regulations back on. All of the things that we've done, nobody's
the Biden administration
never
has
seen anything like, even from a medical
basically
standpoint, right to try. Well, we
anything
can try
good that they've done for the
space-age
most part has
materials
been
instead of going to
reintroducing
Asia
Trump-era
or going
policies.
to Europe and trying to get, when you're terminally ill, now
Look it
you
up.
can go and you can get something. You sign a document. They've been trying to get it for 42 years. But you know what we did for the military was incredible. Choice for our soldiers, where our soldiers, instead of waiting for 3 months to see a doctor, can go out and get themselves fixed up and readied up and take care of themselves, and they're living. And that's why I had the highest approval rating in the history of the VA. So all of these things, we're in a failing nation, but it's not going to be failing anymore. We're going to make it great again.
And he ran out of time. Mr. Kennedy, 2 minutes, closing statement.
In 2013,
Mr.
there was a poll
Kennedy.
taken that asked young people under 35 in this country, are
Kennedy.
you proud of the United States? 85% said yes.
I am.
Same poll taken 5 months ago, 18% said yes. So somehow, during the administration of these two presidents, an entire generation of Americans
I'm not proud of the
has
president,
lost
but
pride in our country and a hope in their own futures. And they feel that
I'll
way
give credit
because
when
they
it's
see what's
due,
happening.
but I
You
just,
can't get into a home.
it's
First
rare.
generation in history in America that is going to live worse lives than their parents. They
That's
see the vitriol that you saw here,
true.
the division, the polarization that
For the
makes
most
them
part.
disgusted with politics. They're seeing the corrupt merger of state and corporate power that has transformed our agencies from the CIA, the health agencies, the environmental agencies, into sock puppets, the industries they're supposed to regulate. They're seeing the destruction of our soils, the destruction of our air and water.
And that's
Watching this
way
happen,
more
and the
important
politicians do nothing about it except for hate on each other.
than our carbon
If
emissions.
you want more of the same,
Like, I know CO2 is
you should
important,
vote for
but there's
President Biden, President Trump.
we're doing
You know what's
better.
going to happen? You know that. They're going to give you 4 more years of the same stuff. If you want things to completely change, you're going to support me because I'm going to change everything. And this is a moral fight. This is a moral battle for the soul of our nation. To restore our moral authority around the world by projecting economic power abroad rather than spending $8 trillion on regime change wars that have left every nation we've touched worse off than we found it. And restoring our moral authority here at home. The first day in office, I'm going to, you heard what they're going to do. You don't even understand it. Here's what I'm going to do. Day 1 in office, I'm going to issue an executive order saying any federal official who tells a lie to the American public will lose his job. Oh,
God. They're all going to be fired.
I'm going to stop the surveillance state.
Ron Swanson would be
the
pleased.
propagandizing by our agencies of the American public.
If you
I'm gonna
enforce that, they're all
unravel
done.
the war machine. I'm going to unravel the corrupt merger of state and corporate power. I know how to do it. I've been litigating against these agencies for years. And I'm uniquely suited to do this, but I can tell you, I'm going to do these things when I get in there. I'm going to make sure that our Constitution is protected, that AI is deployed to make government more transparent rather than buy government to enslave the rest of us. I'm going to bring AI home and blockchain home because we need these new industries to grow our way out of the debt crisis. This is something that these two aren't even talking about.
Speaking of things like that, there's going to be a major announcement soon. I can't talk about it yet, but there's a new business venture that we're joining up with RFK Media and Forsan Corporation. That's going to be very exciting, very cool.
Of our people and our
so stay tuned for that.
Vote for me.
I'm sorry. Okay, I'm gonna mute it real quick to see if we need to.
Very supportive of this candidate. Thank you for watching this different kind of debate. I don't know what you learned, but
Bobby.
To me, the most reliable gauge of who does well on a debate is election betting. And I can report after this debate, Biden is down 13%. Trump, Gavin Newsom, Kamala Harris, and Mr. Kennedy are up. Thank you and good night.
That's not surprising at all, actually. That's not one bit. It's not the least bit surprising. Yeah, so that was the debate. I'm actually very, very pleased. Yeah, it was a fun night. It was a fun night. Thank you all for watching, liking, and supporting. And what I am going to do now is I'm going to play you the promotional video for One Weekend at Horrorland, give you some information, and then if I see any comments pop up, I'll come back on and address those. And if not, we will just end the stream right there. So get ready to check out One Weekend at Horrorland.
Hello, fellow fans. It's your friendly actor Amos Crawley, and I've got some electrifying news.
You've asked for it, and now the Goosebumps Crew podcast wants to deliver.
And you're in for a scare, because the Goosebumps Crew is proud to announce One Weekend at Horrorland.
The biggest Goosebumps convention ever.
But here's the thing, we can't do it alone. We need your support to bring this dream of ours to life.
Calling on all passionate fans to join forces and donate on Kickstarter. With your contributions, we will transform this convention into a hauntingly unforgettable experience.
Our special guests, panels, and activities for fans of all ages will immerse you in an exciting and spooky atmosphere, sure to get you into the spirit of things.
Including some of the guests who've appeared on the Goosebumps Crew podcast.
Together, we'll conjure an atmosphere that will give you goosebumps.
By making a donation, you become an essential part of making this extraordinary event a reality.
And as a token of our appreciation, the Goosebumps Crew has prepared some extraordinary gifts and rewards exclusively for our backers.
So, mark your calendars and join us on this frightful journey. Head over to our Kickstarter page, and let's make One Weekend in Horrorland the ghoulish event of a lifetime. Thank you for your support.